us on this very auspicious day. And I thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for choosing to wake up and attending this conference. So, dear delegates, we have not yet started the session formally. So before we do, does any of the delegates have any doubts? So once we start the session, we can proceed with a smooth flow. So at this point of time, I'll just take some time to clarify doubts if there are any, and then we can start the session smoothly. Yes, Delegate of Egypt.
Are they going to be chips this time?
Yes, Delegate of Egypt. If a delegate is not aware of an answer raised in a point of information, you can send the chit through WhatsApp. The format I have already told you in the orientation session, I believe, but I'll tell it to you once more. You can start with the heading as substantial chat, then from the delegate of so and so country to the delegate of so and so country, and then you can write the message or whatever answer it is and send it in the WhatsApp group, tagging either me, the vice chair, or the rapporteur. Is that clear, Delegate of Egypt?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Delegate of Thailand?
Yes, sir. Are we allowed to use pronouns such as we, as in reference to the entire country and the country we're delegating to and represent?
Delegate of Thailand, personal pronouns of any kind are not entertained, but the pronoun we can be used in context such as we, the delegates of so and so countries, or we, the country of Thailand. It can be used, it is not an issue. So if there are no more doubts, can we proceed with the formal session?
Yes, sir.
That's wonderful. So before starting, I want all of you to relax and enjoy the process. I don't want anyone to be tense, and I want to see a smile on everyone's face. So before we start, can I see all of you smiling? That is wonderful. It brings energy to us, the chair members, as well. So delegates, let us proceed. The first session of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is hereby declared active. The chair will announce roll call and the rapporteur will call each country's name. After the delegates hear their country, the delegates must answer either present or present and voting. Rapporteur, you may please.
The delegate of Albania.
Present voting.
The delegate of Armenia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Australia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Austria. The delegate
present and voting.
The delegate of Bahrain.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Bangladesh.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Belgium.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Bhutan. The delegate of Bhutan. The delegate of Brazil.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Canada.
Present and voting.
The delegate of China. The delegate of China. The delegate of Cuba. The delegate of Cuba.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Czech Republic.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Egypt.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Ethiopia. The delegate of Ethiopia. The delegate of France.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Georgia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Germany.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Ghana.
Present and voting.
The delegate of India.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Indonesia. The delegate of Indonesia. The delegate of Japan.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Jordan.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Kenya. The delegate The delegate of Maldives. The delegate
Present
of
and
Fiji.
voting. Present and voting.
The delegate of Mauritius.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Mexico.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Mongolia. The delegate of Mongolia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Morocco.
Present and voting.
The delegate of North Korea. The delegate of North Korea. The delegate of Norway.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Philippines.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Poland. The delegate of Poland.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Qatar.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Republic of the Congo.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Serbia.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Spain.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Sri Lanka.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Switzerland.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Thailand.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Turkey.
Present and voting.
The delegate of United Kingdom.
Present and voting.
The delegate of United States. The delegate of United States. The delegate of Venezuela.
Present and voting.
The delegate of Vietnam.
Present and voting.
Thank you, delegates.
Thank you, Rapture. At this point of time, are there delegates who could not answer to the roll call? Or are there any delegates who missed the roll call due to some internet issues? I noticed delegate of China could not speak. Delegate of China, are you there?
Yes, sir, I did try to speak, but perhaps I wasn't audible.
Delegate of China, kindly raise a point of personal privilege and ask to add your name to the roll call.
The delegate of China would raise a point of personal privilege to mark me as present in roll call.
Delegate of China, could you please tell whether you're present or present and voting?
Present and voting.
Thank you so much, Delegate of China. Delegates, after the roll call, we can see there are 42 delegates present, which makes a simple majority of 21 delegates. And for 2/3 majority, we need 28 delegates during the voting. Thank you so much, Rapture, and thank you so much, delegates. Delegates. Since the committee has only one topic available, the agenda for this session of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is set as difficulties in the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. At this point of time, are there any motions on the floor? Delegate of Armenia.
The delegate of Armenia would like to raise a motion for the general speakers list with individual time being 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Delegate of Armenia, that is wonderful, but could the delegate kindly rephrase the motion? Delegate of Armenia would like to raise a motion to establish the general speakers list.
The delegate of Armenia would like to raise a motion to establish the general speakers list with individual time being 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Delegate of Armenia, this motion is now in order. Delegates, could all the delegates please lower their hands? Are there any seconds to the motion raised by the delegate? Are there any objections? Are there any objections? Okay. Seeing both seconds and objections, this motion shall now be put into vote. Delegates, please lower your hands. Delegates who are in favor of the motion, please raise your virtual hands. Thank you, delegates. Please lower your hands down. Now, delegates who are against this motion are kindly requested to raise their hands. Seeing absolute majority, this motion has been passed, and the time for general speakers list is set as 1 minute 30 seconds. Now, delegates who would like to enroll themselves in the general speakers list are kindly requested to raise their placards. Rapucha, could you please read out the first 10 delegates you can see on your screen who are raising their virtual hands?
Sure. The delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Morocco.
The delegate of delegates, once your name has been called upon, you're kindly requested to lower your hands down. So delegate of Thailand, followed by delegate of Morocco. Next.
The delegate of Republic of Congo.
Delegate of Congo. Next.
The delegate of Bangladesh.
Delegate of Bangladesh.
The delegate of Austria.
Delegate of Austria.
The delegate of Norway.
Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Armenia.
Delegate of Armenia.
The delegate of France.
The delegate of France.
The delegate of Albania.
Delegate of Albania.
The delegate of Japan.
Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Egypt.
Delegate of Egypt. Rapucha, do we have 10 speakers now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Delegates who still haven't got a chance in the primary speakers list, do not worry. Your turn will come soon as the committee is progressing. We will be taking just 10 speakers for now, and as soon as we come back to the general speakers list later, you will be getting a chance. Thank you so much, Rapucha. Now, delegates. First on the general speakers list is the delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Thailand, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Respected Chair and fellow delegates, the pandemic taught us that national solutions to global problems do not work. We meet today with immense ambition to save our people and save our planet. Yet we find ourselves facing three growing gaps: our NDCs or climate pledges, mitigation of the climate's effects on our oceans, and complete overlook over the issues facing developing countries. Climate finance to frontline developing states decreased by 25% in the year 2019. Our failure to provide aid is measured in lives, fellow delegates, like those of the 11 million Thai farmers who have lost their lands and had them salted by seawater every year due to the rising sea levels and the floods they create. Our jewel, Bangkok, is threatened by complete drowning within the next 20 years, along with countless other island nations and coastal cities. Millions of dreams, ambitions, and hopes will be swept by the ocean. The influence we radiate is immoral as much as it's unjust. If we were to ever solve the problems of the Paris Climate Agreement and agreement's implementation, we must close those three gaps, because reaching 2 degrees is a death sentence to the people of Thailand, Maldives, Dominica, Fiji, Kenya, and Mozambique, and it's a cold one at that. And we do not want this cold death sentence. Our people need the actions today. And the Kingdom of Thailand is willing to cooperate with the international community to help lift developing countries from this universal calamity. Thank you, delegates.
Thank you, Delegate of Thailand. Thank you, Delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Thailand, since you have used up all your time in the general speakers list, unfortunately, we won't be having time for points of information. So the next speaker on the general speakers list is the Delegate of Morocco. Delegate of Morocco, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to one and all present here. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It's global, Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Morocco's climate targets and policies are almost sufficient. The almost sufficient rating indicates that Morocco's climate policies and commitments are not yet consistent with the Paris Agreement's limit, but could be with moderate improvements. The Morocco's policies and unconditional target meet its fair share contribution to limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Morocco's conditional target to be achieved with international support is almost but not yet compatible with 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, and it should be strengthened. Morocco should receive international support to implement additional policies and go slightly beyond its conditional target. Morocco has put forward a detailed list of measures it will deploy to reach its updated NDC target, separated into conditional and unconditional measures. Morocco does not have a zero target, but is cooperating with the Paris Climate Agreement. The delegate thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Morocco. Delegate of Morocco, you do have 6 seconds remaining. Do you want to yield the floor to points of information, or would you like to yield the floor back to the chair?
Points of information, chair.
Delegate of Morocco, you will be open to 1 point of information since the time only permits it for that much. Delegates, if you do not have anything to say, kindly lower your hands because I can see many hands already raised without asking for it. Delegates, are there any points of information to the Delegate of Morocco? Yes, Delegate of India.
The delegate of India would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of Morocco. Moroccan regions are affected by drought, increase of average temperatures, heat waves, changing rainfall patterns, and extreme rainfalls. Did Moroccan government implemented any projects regarding this?
Delegate of Morocco.
Thank you, Delegate of India, for asking this question. Yes, Delegate, we have implemented several projects for this, and we have succeeded and achieved the outcome we were looking for. And in the future, we are going to make more projects which can help the country more. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Morocco. Since your time has passed, we won't be open to any more points of information to the Delegate of Morocco. Next on the speakers list is the Republic of Congo. Delegate of Congo, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair and respected delegates. The Republic of Congo is rich, but at the same time poor. Today, despite being a resource-rich country, 2/3 of our population is starving. Health and sanitation are revolting. We have debts totaling almost 107% of our GDP as of 2020. The Paris Agreement proves to be the need of the hour, but a rapid transformation of our complete economical structure can prove to be destructive. Considering 83% of our revenue is dependent on oil. The World Bank and the Republic of Congo government signed a $41.8 million agreement, which is expected to reduce 8.4 million tons of carbon emissions through 2025. We are formulating and implementing economic reforms to diversify our economy to a more green-friendly way, but it will take time. And coercing it to take a rapid pace can have catastrophic effects on us. Let me conclude. All must pay the debt of nature. A bit late is better late than never. I would like to yield my remaining time to any and all points of information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Congo. Delegates, are there any points of information? Yes, Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Norway would like to raise a point of information against the delegate of Republic of Congo that despite being a resource-rich country, the Republic of Congo suffers from deforestation, poaching, river pollution, and unsanitary conditions. What as the delegate of Congo has to say with regards to this?
The delegate of Republic of Congo would like to answer the point of information raised by delegate of Norway by stating that Republic of Congo is very sadly has been affected by wars, civil wars, and our history. Putting our history behind is what we are looking forward, and hopefully by 2030, all it will be behind us, and we will emerge as a developed country.
Thank you, Delegate of Congo. All delegates, please lower your hands since we won't be having any more points of information towards the delegate of the Republic of Congo. Delegates, please do lower your hands.
The delegate of Japan has a point of order.
Yes, Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Congo for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of the Republic of Congo, you have been warned. Kindly refrain from using personal pronouns. And this warning goes to all the other delegates in the committee as well. Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Next on the general speakers list is the Delegate of Bangladesh. Delegate of Bangladesh, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Delegate of Bangladesh thanks the chair. 25 years ago, people could be excused for not knowing much or doing much about climate change. Wake up, it's 2022. Today, we the citizens of Earth have no excuse at all. Let us all be aware there is no planet B. The Paris Agreement is a legally blinding international treaty on climate change. This agreement was negotiated by 196 parties on 2015 in United Nations Climate Change Conference. Bangladesh is frequently cited as one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change because of its disadvantageous geographical location, flat and low-lying topography. Bangladesh has decided on stock taking of the mitigation measures already implemented between 2015 and 2020. This update by the NDZ will be built on the theme of Bangladesh climate change strategy and action plan of emission mitigation and low carbon development. The delegate of Bangladesh believed that the fight against climate change cannot be won alone and global cooperation is the key. Let's not forget, Earth is a fine place and is worth fighting for. The delegate of Bangladesh thanks the chair.
Delegates, please lower your hands and only raise them until we have asked you to do so. Delegate of Bangladesh, are you open to any points of information?
The delegate of Bangladesh is open to one point of information.
Delegates, are there any points of information on the floor? Delegate of Jordan.
The delegate of Jordan would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of Bangladesh by stating that around 3 foot rise in sea level would submerge around 20% of the country and displace more than 30 million people. So what has Bangladesh done to reduce this crisis?
The delegate thanks the chair.
Yes, Delegate of Bangladesh, you may proceed.
The Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief, MODMR, Government of Bangladesh, in anticipation of the monsoon flood 2020, took all the possible precaution to limit the loss of life and livelihoods. The overall objective was to provide evacuation, livestock, and movable equipment. The BDRSC aimed to support the household with multiple cash grants and provide them affected communities. The operation indeed to assess the vulnerable households residing in the high risk of areas for early action to ensure the preparedness for potential flood which had harmed their lives and livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Bangladesh. All delegates are kindly requested to lower their hands since we won't be having any points of information towards the Delegate of Bangladesh. Next on the general speakers list is the Delegate of Austria. Delegate of Austria, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Greetings, Honorable Chair and fellow delegates. The delegation of Austria is honored to be part of this productive session. We are moving to Mars, ladies and gentlemen. In addition to Austria's low ranking, 73% of Austrians believe climate change is a consequence, and its consequences are the most vital challenge humanity faces in 21st century, affecting the lives of 70% of people. As if things didn't get any worse, 67% of Austrians think the country will not drastically reduce its carbon dioxide emission by 2050, as per the Paris Agreement. In the light of this, the delegate of Austria think we will soon have to follow Elon Musk to Mars as life on Earth appears to be difficult. In addition, being concerned about our Earth and nation, many respondents support government measures intended to change people's behavior, such as tax products and services that cause global warming, and fast, low pollution trains in cooperation with neighbors. By doing this, if the measures are determined in time, we won't have to move to Mars. And by this, the speech is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Austria. Delegate of Austria, would you like to yield the floor to points of information?
I would like to yield my remaining time to the next delegate.
Thank you, Delegate of Austria. Next on the general speakers list is the Delegate of Sri Lanka. Yes, why have the delegate raised their hand?
The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Austria for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Austria, you have been warned. All the delegates are please requested to refrain from using personal pronouns. Thank you, Delegate of Sri Lanka. Next on the general speakers list is the delegate of Norway.
Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, like is delegate of Austria open for a question from the executive board?
Delegate of Austria, would you like to be open to any point of information from the executive board? No, Mr. Chief Judge, she is not.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, Delegate of Austria. Thank you, Chief Judge. Next on the general speak is the Delegate of Norway. Delegate of Norway, you have been recognized. Please proceed with your speech.
Delegate thanks the chair. There's an urge to consider the needs of the youngest generation because none of us has the right to assume that for our today, they should give up their tomorrow. A very warm morning to the respective dignitaries present over here. On the 20th of June 2016, the government of Norway deposited its instrument of ratification of the Paris Agreement with the UN, making it one among the first countries to do so. Its ratification comes on the heels of the country's pledge to become carbon neutral within just 14 years. Norway's nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement is to reduce our emissions by at least 50 to 55% by 2030 compared to the 1990 levels. In June 2017, the Norwegian Parliament adopted the Climate Change Act. The Act introduces a system of 5-year reviews based on the same cycle as the Paris Agreement. In addition, the Act introduces an annual reporting mechanism. The government shall each year submit to the Parliament updated information on status and progress in achieving the climate targets under the law. In addition, about 50% of the present Norwegian emissions are covered by the EU emission trading scheme. The government has policy tools that will allow it to lead a comprehensive initiative to address this global issue. The delegate of Norway strongly believes that by working with the international community to effectively address these challenges, the government's ambition to realize a cost-efficient solution for CCS in Norway, provided this results in technology development internationally, could safeguard the stability of strategically important countries and regions and restore the tarnished global peace. The delegate yields back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Norway. Delegate of Norway, unfortunately, you have used up all the delegates' time, so we won't be having any points of information towards the Delegate of Norway. Yes, the Delegate of Republic of Kenya.
The delegate of Republic of Kenya want to raise a motion.
Yes, Delegate of Kenya.
The delegate of Republic of Kenya would raise a motion to point of personal privilege to mark as present.
Sure, Delegate of Kenya. It seems that the Delegate of Kenya has missed the roll call and we will be marking you as present. Thank you so much for bringing this to attention, Delegate of Republic of Kenya. Moving on. Next on the general speakers list is the Delegate of Armenia. Delegate of Armenia, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair and EB members for the recognition. Armenia is situated at the cultural, historical, and religious intersection and located at the crossroads between Europe and Asia. The country spans 29,743 square of mountainous terrain centered on the Arat Valley, the heart of the Armenian nation since biblical times. With a population of around 3 million, Armenia contributes as little as 0.02% to the global GHG emissions and is in the lower range of per capita footprint with 3.33 t CO2e, but has been an active participant in the global climate dialogue. For Armenia, altitude is the strongest controlling factor determining the spatial distribution of temperature and precipitation in Armenia. Armenia has already reported evidence of climate change, having documented a 1.1 degrees Celsius increase in the average summer temperature and a 10% reduction in average precipitation over the past 80 years. In its updated NDC 2021 to 30, America sets the economy-wide GHG emission reduction single-year target of 40% by 2030 compared with the base year 1990. Armenia's NDC demonstrates our increased climate ambitions, our vision of resilient and low-carbon growth is linked to our solid adaptation strategy. Thank you. The delegate of Armenia would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Armenia. Delegates, at this point of time, are there any motions on the floor? Yes, Delegate of Albania.
Delegate of Albania wishes to suspend formal debate and move into a moderated caucus on the topic understanding the physical and social challenges for a warming world of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. For individual speakers, time 90 seconds, total speakers time 30 minutes.
Thank you, Delegate of Albania. Delegate of Albania, could you please repeat the topic?
Understanding the physical and social challenges for a warming world of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels.
Thank you so much, Delegate of Albania. Delegates, kindly lower your hands. Yes, Delegate of Papua New Guinea. Delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? Delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? Delegates, are there any objections to this motion? Seeing both seconds and objections, this motion shall now be put into vote. Delegates, all of you are kindly requested to lower your hands. Delegates who are in favor of the motion, please raise your virtual hands. Delegates who are against this motion are kindly requested to raise their virtual hand. Seeing absolutely no majority, this motion has unfortunately not passed. So all the delegates, once again, please lower your hands. Delegate of Philippines, please lower your hand. Yeah. So delegates, are there any other motions on the floor? Delegate of Australia.
The delegate of Australia would like to raise a motion to suspend the GSL and move into a moderated caucus on the topic need for carbon pricing for decarbonization for a total time duration for 45 minutes and individual time speakers for 1 minute.
This motion is now in order, Delegate of Australia. Delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? Delegates, kindly lower your hands once again. Are there any objections to this motion? Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing both seconds and objections, this motion shall now be put into vote. Delegates, please lower your hands once again. Delegates who are in favor of this motion, kindly raise your virtual hands. Delegates who are against this motion are kindly requested to raise their virtual hands. Delegates seeing two-third majority, this motion has been passed. And the delegate of Australia, would you like to be the first or the last speaker on the speakers list?
First on the speakers list.
First on the speakers list. Delegates who would like to enroll themselves into the moderated caucus speakers list are kindly requested to raise their virtual hands. Delegates who would like to speak in the moderated caucus are kindly requested to raise their virtual hands. Rapporteur, could you please note down the delegates who have raised their hands?
Yes. Delegate of Czech Republic.
Just one second, Rapporteur. Delegate of Czech Republic.
Delegate of Morocco.
Delegate of Morocco.
Delegate of Albania.
Delegate of Albania.
Delegate of Bangladesh.
Delegate of Bangladesh.
Delegate of Armenia.
Delegate of Armenia. Delegates, once you have heard your name, kindly lower your hands.
Delegate of Egypt.
Delegate of Egypt.
The delegate of Canada.
The delegate of Canada.
The delegate of United Kingdom.
The delegate of UK.
The delegate of France.
The delegate of France.
The delegate of Belgium.
The delegate of Belgium.
The delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Sri Lanka.
Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea.
The delegate of Mongolia.
Delegate of Mongolia.
The delegate of Jordan.
Delegate of Jordan.
The delegate of Philippines.
Delegate of Philippines.
The delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia.
The delegate of Norway.
Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of China.
Delegate of China.
The delegate of Mexico.
Delegate of Mexico.
The delegate of Cuba.
Delegate of Cuba.
The delegate of Poland.
Delegate of Poland.
Delegate of Georgia.
Delegate of Georgia.
Delegate of Germany.
Delegate of Germany.
Delegate of Thailand.
Thailand.
Delegate of Indonesia.
Delegate of Indonesia.
Delegate of India.
Delegate of India.
Delegate of Australia.
Delegate of Australia would be the first speaker on the general speakers list, so it's fine. Moving on.
The delegate of Mauritius.
Mauritius.
The delegate of Bahrain.
Delegate of Bahrain.
The delegate of Congo.
Delegate of Congo.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, delegates. All delegates, please lower your hands. Delegates, we are now about to start the moderated caucus, and the topic is need for carbon pricing for a total duration of 45 minutes and individual speakers' time being 1 minute. And since it was the delegate of Australia's motion that had been passed, delegate of Australia, you've chosen to be the first speaker on the speakers list. Delegate of Australia, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Australia thanks the chair. Carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external cost of greenhouse gas emissions. A recent report of the High-Level Commission on Carbon Pricing and Competitiveness finds that carbon pricing is an effective, flexible, and low-cost approach to reducing greenhouse gases. Carbon pricing can also be implemented through emissions trading systems where firms acquire allowances for each ton of carbon house gases they emit, with the supply of such permits limited by the government. Carbon pricing should be a part of a comprehensive mitigation strategy, and this strategy should contain supportive measures to enhance its effectiveness and accessibility. On 1st July 2012, the Australian federal government introduced a carbon price scheme, and this scheme had cut down carbon emissions by as much as 17 million tons. We have a single mission, and that is to protect and hand on the planet to our next generation. The delegate of Australia once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Australia. Next on the list is the Delegate of Czech Republic. Delegate of Czech Republic, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Carbon pricing effectively shifts the responsibility of paying for the damages of climate change from the public to the GHG emission producers. This gives producers the option of either reducing their emissions to avoid paying a high price or continue emitting but having to pay for their emissions. It creates a price signal that reduces GHG emissions and at the same time provides a strong financial case for shifting investments away from high emission fossil fuels based technology towards cleaner technology. In order for carbon pricing to work effectively, there is the need to establish an international emission trading system that allows the trading of carbon credits across countries. Countries will be required to ensure proper utilization of the allocated credits, and it will bring about a universal method to reduce GHG emissions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Czech Republic. Next on the speakers list is the Delegate of Morocco. Delegate of Morocco, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Morocco's tax to GDP ratio of 27.6% is lower than the OECD average of 33.9%, but higher than the LAC. Morocco does not have an explicit carbon tax nor a CO2 emissions trading system. Morocco is aiming to establish a domestic carbon market instrument and integrate with the international market in a few years. This crediting instrument under the PMR is seen as a stepping stone towards another market-based instrument. Voluntary carbon offset program was launched for environmental protection. This program was introduced to raise awareness about the greenhouse effect. The government of Morocco is trying its best to curb these issues and become a better version. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Morocco. Next on the list is the Delegate of Albania. Delegate of Albania, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Delegate of Albania thanks the chair. Carbon dioxide is a pollutant not when naturally exhaled by animals, but rather through the release of naturally sequestered carbon by human practice of burning fossil fuels. The problem of global warming and global climate change cannot be ignored in any discussion regarding long-term energy policy. Carbon should not flow unpriced into the atmosphere. Since every action of a modern life involves using fossil fuel, the only way to get enough change is to send a price signal so that everyone from investors to car buyers to electric toothbrush users will find behavior changing automatically. Furthermore, taking forward the initiative for cooperation between the governments, private sectors, and civilians so as to resolve the climate crisis, curbing deforestation, accelerating the shift to electric automobiles, and financing non-conventional sources of energy are also crucial. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Albania. Next on the list was the Delegate of Bangladesh. Delegate of Bangladesh, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Bangladesh thanks the chair. The Carbon Coalition, an initiative by the legislators in 9 states, is leading a state-based regional movement in support of reducing carbon emissions by putting a price on carbon. Each legislator has introduced or is a drafting proposal that is unique to a local economy. This regional approach eliminates any concerns about competitive disadvantages and shows the momentum around the climate actions in states. Experts frequently point to carbon pricing as the most cost-effective tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Different studies show that carbon pricing can successfully reduce greenhouse emissions, but meeting temperature targets within definite time under the Paris Agreement requires more than incremental improvements. It requires achieving net zero emission within a few decades. To date, there is a little evidence that carbon pricing has produced deep emission reduction even at high prices. The delegate once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Bangladesh. Next on the list is the Delegate of Armenia. Delegate of Armenia, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Enough rhetoric. It's time to act. That's the gist of a new report from the International Agency, which says the world must bring about total transformation of its energy systems if it hopes to minimize the effects of carbon. The agency is calling for a string of bold actions and aggressive deadlines in the report, which is a roadmap to decarbonization, either by reducing them or removing them through technology such as carbon capture. Numerous countries, including Armenia, have taken a step further by pledging to go carbon neutral by 2050. According to Armenia, Region Zero is important, but there's no universal consensus on when the date of net zero should be. The sooner the better remains a common reference. Technology is on our side. It costs more to simply run most of today's coal plants than it does to build a new renewable plants. From scratch, economic analysis confirms the wisdom of this. Thank you. The delegate of Armenia would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Armenia. Next on the list is the Delegate of Egypt. Delegate of Egypt, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks to the chair. Carbon pricing is an interesting topic. Carbon pricing is an interesting topic. It can be basically expressed as when the traffic increases, creating a toll booth, thus forcing some people to find other routes. In developed countries, there are many routes, so people can find other routes. But it may not be the same in developing countries. What the delegate of Egypt is trying to imply is that it is technically really harsh to implement carbon pricing on developing countries across the globe. Furthermore, the delegate of Egypt has noted that small amounts of carbon tax only reduce global carbon dioxide minimally, and to have a significant reduction, huge amounts has to be imposed, which again is not technically feasible by countries with lower income. Hence, the delegate of Egypt suggests that countries that are confident in their already existing plans to reduce global carbon dioxide emissions, like Egypt, may not necessarily impose carbon pricing methodologies, while countries where global carbon dioxide emissions appears to be increasing may adapt such methodologies. Thanks to the chair.
Thank you so much, Delegate of Egypt. Next on the list is the Delegate of Canada. Delegate of Canada, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The country of Canada has already implemented carbon pricing and encourages other countries to do so as well. Carbon pricing in Canada is implemented either as regulatory fee or tax levied on carbon content on the fuels at the Canadian provincial, territorial, or federal level. Carbon pricing encourages countries to take action for decarbonization. A price on carbon helps shift the burden for damage from greenhouse gas emissions back to those who are responsible for it and those who can avoid it. There is also a growing consensus among both governments and businesses on the fundamental role of carbon pricing in the transition to a decarbonized economy. Carbon pricing may also be used to settle internal issues of a country so that they can focus more on climate change, or the revenue generated could also be used on research purposes. The delegate would like to give the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Canada. Next on the list was the Delegate of the United Kingdom. Delegate of UK, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks to the chair. Carbon pricing is designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by adding a cost to the creation of emissions. Since 2018, carbon prices have increased in the United Kingdom. Explicit carbon prices have increased to an average of Euro 17.56 per ton of carbon, up by Euro 10.18 since 2018. The UK's carbon price has hit £50 as the nation's post-Brexit emissions trading scheme. And the UK government commits to cut national greenhouse gas emissions by at least 100% of 1990 levels and to net zero by 2050, and agrees interim 5-year carbon budgets that take the country progressively towards that 100% target, at least at that lowest possible cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of UK. Next on the list was the Delegate of France. Delegate of France, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, decarbonization is no longer a vision. It is an action that has to be taken not after 10 years, but now. France has made it clear that every carbon emitted will pay a price. Since 2018, carbon prices have increased in France. Explicit carbon prices have increased to an average of 29.4 euros per ton. In 2021, fuel excise taxes amounted to 63.6 euros on average. With 62.3 of emissions price, emissions coverage is lowest in industry. This is a great feat considering that this sector accounts for 28.7% of emissions in France. This has persuaded people to use zero carbon emitting vehicles such as EVs and cycles for their needs, which saw a steep decline in CO2 emissions. Climate change is growing stronger day by day. Delegates, let us take action now. If not now, then when is the question? The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of France. Next on the list was the Delegate of Belgium. Delegate of Belgium, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Carbon pricing is an approach to reducing greenhouse emissions, also referred to as greenhouse gas or GHG emissions, that uses market mechanics to part the cost of emitting on the emitters. Its broad goal is to discourage the use of carbon dioxide emitting fossil fuels in order to protect the environment, address the causes of climate change, meet national and international climate agreements. Carbon pricing is recommended by experts as the most cost-effective tool for reducing greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions. Modeling efforts have pointed to the importance of reaching net zero emissions as soon as possible during this century to avoid the most dangerous effects of global warming. Parties to the Paris Agreement has therefore committed to deep decarbonization. Collectively, these countries, including Belgium, have agreed to the objective of keeping global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and of achieving net zero emissions during the second half of the century. Empirical study. Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Belgium. Next on the list was the Delegate of Japan. Delegate of Japan, you have been recognized and you may please proceed.
The delegate of Japan thanks the chair. The addiction to fossil fuels is pushing humanity to the brink. We face a stark choice. Either we stop it or it stops us. It is time to say enough. Enough of killing ourselves with carbon. To keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius alive, we need to put a price on carbon. Japan is one of the first Asian countries to implement a carbon tax with a tax rate of $2.65 per ton of carbon dioxide released. Japan sees this price mechanism as a way to stop current greenhouse gas emissions and improve technological innovations, a higher cost of production, which will motivate firms to switch from more clean or renewable energy. Japan's carbon tax is revenue neutral. Revenue generated gets redirected to supplement renewable energy projects. As a result, a society that uses little fossil fuels will be established. Japan realizes carbon pricing as an aggressive approach to global warming. But such bold actions need to be taken to fulfill the carbon neutral pledge. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Next on the list is the Delegate of Sri Lanka. Delegate of Sri Lanka, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech. Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Sri Lanka apologizes. He lagged out. Carbon pricing is essentially a tax paid on carbon. It has its advantages like discouraging emissions and taking the money used and using it for green energy. A problem with this is that carbon pricing will cause the prices of fossil fuels to rise. This will make it harder for people to heat their homes and buy fuels for their cars. This is intended, but what about poor people who cannot afford electric cars? They will be reduced to poverty further and further. The production of EVs isn't enough to facilitate such a big shift. We do not have the means to build electric aircraft. Even though technically a company with a lot of money could buy fuel-efficient aircraft, these aircraft still run on kerosene. The energy density numbers just don't add up. Thus, exceptions have to be made in some cases. The COVID pandemic has slowed economies down. Considering these reasons, the delegate urges other countries to be cautious of the implications while implementing carbon pricing. The delegate thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Sri Lanka. Next on the list is the Delegate of Papua New Guinea. Delegate of Papua New, Delegate of Papua New Guinea, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea thanks the chair. Due to the current circumstances of climate change and carbon emissions, the government of Papua New Guinea has collaborated with the Australian government for building resilience to climate change. The two governments plan together to join other Pacific Island states and control carbon emissions through carbon pricing, regular reports, and checks. The Papua New Guinean government is also taking steps to decrease the rate of deforestation due to carbonization by issuing various acts for the conservation of wild plants, trees, and animals. But by paying the price of carbon emissions, the people affected by it can be given an opportunity to restabilize their lives, and the emitters would realize the price on loss of life because of the emissions. The carbon pricing needs to be issued more effectively to get its maximum benefit. The delegate once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Papua New Guinea. Next on the list is Delegate of Mongolia. Delegate of Mongolia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Mongolia thanks the chair. Mongolia faces severe risks due to climate change, including rapid desertification, water scarcity, changing precipitation patterns, seasonal intensification of extreme weather events, increase the melting of permafrost areas, and negatively impact human health. Mongolia has comparably high per capita greenhouse gas emissions, among other factors, especially due to above average per capita energy intensity, with abundant reserves of domestic coal supplying over 90% of primary energy demand and heat. It is very challenging to estimate the necessary time and capacities needed for the both sectoral analysis and planning in the frame of the NDC update and in view of elaborating decarbonization pathways based on long-term sectoral climate mitigation goals. Therefore, an objective of the process is to initiate sectoral planning to raise the awareness of all relevant stakeholders and to achieve a full review of all current policies, sector goals, and scheduled sectoral planning processes. The delegate of Mongolia once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Mongolia. Next on the list is the Delegate of Jordan. Delegate of Jordan, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Jordan thanks the chair. Carbon pricing is an effective method of raising funds as well as for using better energy producing fuels. But this system will harm the people in the end because increasing carbon prices will lead to the increase in energy prices that will not be affordable to the poor section of society and struggling middle class families. This is due to the reason that majority of the income of people are spent on energy bills, especially in Jordan and developing countries. So this increase wouldn't be affordable. Moreover, it will cost a lot of jobs and increase the work strain on employed class because of the companies drive for more production in less pollution to get more profit. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan doesn't follow the system, but if new amendments are introduced to the system where an international price is set and subcommittees set up where prices are set accordingly to the country's GDP, and these periodically reviewed and renewable technologies of energy are reinforced at better prices, then the dependency of fossil fuels will be reduced to a great extent. The system of carbon pricing has potential, but this
Delegate of Jordan is requested to conclude.
Yeah, okay, Chair. And a subcommittee set up to enforce the regulation, then this system can be made more acceptable and less divided. The delegate of Jordan thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Jordan. Next on the list is the Delegate of Philippines. Delegate of Philippines, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
In the light of the chair and the delegates of the House, this is the Delegate of Philippines. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, Homo sapiens have never minded of what's happening to the world, but to their wallet. But now we got to change. Carbon pricing is a relevant point that has a great potential of dragging the whole thing down. Now, carbon pricing has to be seen as a fine, but not a fee. It's not bribing the world for polluting it, but to express a regret. The fine fund, according to the point of the delegate of Philippines, has to be financed all the way to countries that suffer. Always the countries that pollute and suffer are not the same. So countries like Philippines has to be supported in these terms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate of Philippines. Next on the list was the Delegate of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Delegate of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external costs of greenhouse gas emissions. that the public pays for, such as damage to crops, healthcare costs from heat waves and droughts, and loss of property from flooding and sea level rise. Keeping in mind that Saudi Arabia is one of the leading fossil fuel exporters, which increases the carbon dioxide emissions that adversely impact the climate change and increases the climate temperature. To date, Saudi Arabia doesn't put a price on carbon emissions. Saudi Arabia neither has a carbon tax nor a cap and trade system pricing mechanism in place. However, in October last year, the Saudi Arabia Energy Ministry announced plans to launch a carbon trading scheme as part of the kingdom's goal to diversify its energy supplies and reduce carbon emissions. Saudi Arabia could either adopt a carbon tax scheme or construct a carbon trading market. A carbon tax could be the appropriate mechanism for several reasons, such as it could be combined with the recently introduced value-added tax VAT schemes, reducing the administration costs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Saudi Arabia. Next on the list was the Delegate of Norway. Delegate of Norway, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. To be successful, carbon pricing policies has to be well aligned with the broader policy context in a country. Norway's experience with carbon pricing, though, is just an example, not a recipe. Pricing emissions can be done by taxes or through emission trading. In Norway, we do both. A CO2 tax was introduced in 1991. Emission trading scheme was introduced in 2005. Today, over 80% of Norwegian emissions are subject to the CO2 tax and are covered by the ETS. This includes the petroleum sector too. Norway was the first country in the world to introduce a green tax, the 1970s mineral oil tax. We were the second country to introduce a CO2 tax. Without carbon pricing, Norway's emissions would have been 10 to 15% higher than they are today. Norway supports the promotion of carbon pricing through initiatives such as the Carbon Partnership Leadership Coalition, Partnership for Market Readiness, and Transformative Carbon Asset Facility. Undoubtedly, the effect of Norway's participation in the EU ETS is to be taken into account in assessing progress towards the 2050 targets. The delegate yields back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Norway. Next on the list was the Delegate of China. Delegate of China, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech. Delegate of China. Delegate of China, I'm so sorry you're not audible. No, Delegate of China, we cannot hear you.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yes, Delegate of China, you may please proceed with your speech.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Carbon pricing is a market-based strategy for lowering global warming emissions. Putting a price on carbon helps to incorporate climate risk into the price of business. Emitting carbon becomes more expensive, and consumers and producers seek ways to use technologies that generate less of it. The emission trading scheme, or ETS system, creates a carbon market where the emitters can buy and sell emission credits. This scheme allows the countries to limit emissions, but also allows economic freedom for the emitters to reduce emissions or purchase emission allowances. China has the biggest carbon market right now with the ETS rate of 54.2 yuan per ton, and it is expected to increase to 65 yuan per ton in 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of China. Yes, Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of China for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of China, you have been warned once again. All delegates are kindly requested not to use personal pronouns and only use the formal language in any modern United Nations program. Moving on, next on the speakers list was the Delegate of Mexico. Delegate of Mexico, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Carbon, one of the most dangerous greenhouse gases. If we fail to stop carbon emission, we really cannot predict a stable future for our planet. Carbon pricing is a system that captures the cost of emitting carbon. This puts a barrier on high amount of emissions. This is an excellent strategy from both the point of views of economic growth as well as control of climate change. Economists believe that one of the most effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emission is carbon pricing. The delegation of Mexico would like to mention a few principles that makes us so confident in this. First of all, this instrument is market driven. Secondly, and this is the most important, it nudges the business sector to find alternatives through innovation. If they want to avoid a carbon price, they have to go into clean technologies. And of course, through this innovation, we are benefiting a lot. It is cost efficient. The delegation of Mexico believes this system is great for prospering while still cutting down greenhouse emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Mexico. Next on the list was the Delegate of Cuba. Delegate of Cuba, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. By carbon prices, by this word we all mean implementing carbon taxes. Now, despite the socialist criticism, Cuba is also interested in implementing the carbon. Now, the initiative aimed to identify carbon prices needed to achieve the ambition of Paris Climate Agreement. After the Paris Climate Agreement 2015, carbon pricing is one of the important steps that are taken by the many of the countries, and Cuba is also interested in it. At the present time, $50 per ton is its rate. But for small country like Cuba, it is not possible to pay such a high tax. So some other developed countries, neighboring developed countries should give us a tax, should give us revenue so that we can implement more and more carbon pricing. Thank you. And I yield the floor to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Cuba. Yes, Delegate of France.
Delegate of France would like to raise a point of order to Delegate of Cuba for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Cuba, you have been warned. Kindly refrain from using personal pronouns. Thank you, Delegate of France. Moving on, next on the list was the Delegate of Poland. Delegate of Poland, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks to the chair. Carbon pricing is a strategy for lowering global warming emissions. Putting a price on carbon helps to incorporate climate risks into the cost of doing business. Emitting carbon becomes more expensive, and the consumers and producers seek ways to use technologies and products that generate less of it. A recent report of the High-Level Commission on Carbon Pricing and Competitiveness finds that carbon pricing is an effective, flexible, and low-cost approach to reducing carbon dioxide, to reducing greenhouse gases. The widespread and growing use of carbon pricing reflects this belief in its effectiveness. There are currently 30 carbon taxes and 31 emissions trading schemes across the globe. Poland priced about 82% of its carbon emissions from energy use, and about 21% were priced at an ECR level above 60 euros per ton of carbon dioxide. Emissions priced at this level originated primarily from the road transport sector. The majority of
the Delegate of Poland is kindly requested to give the concluding remarks.
Okay. The majority of unpriced emissions were from the residential and commercial sector and the industry sector. The Delegate of Poland thanks the chair and yields the floor back to them.
Thank you, Delegate of Poland. Next on the list was the Delegate of Georgia. Delegate of Georgia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The Delegate of Georgia would like to thank the respective chair. The need of carbon pricing is very important for the decarbonization. The costs ensure that polluters don't get a free pass to emit carbon, leaving society to foot the massive bills for the impacts of the climate change, and countries which use carbon pricing are Chile, Canada, China, Colombia, Denmark, Argentina, the European Union, Japan, Kazakhstan, and so on.
Delegate of Georgia, if you're done with the speech, you're kindly requested to say the delegate of Georgia would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Delegate of Georgia would like to use the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, delegate of Georgia. Next on the speech. Yes, delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia would like to raise the point of personal privilege to use the toilet.
Sure, delegate of Saudi Arabia, you may use the toilet.
Thank you.
Yes, delegate of Venezuela. Yes, delegate of Venezuela. Delegate of Venezuela, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Delegate of Austria.
The delegate of Austria would like to raise a point of personal privilege to use the restroom.
Sure, delegate of Austria, you.
Thank you.
Yes, delegate of Canada.
The delegate of Canada would like to raise a point of personal privilege to fill some water and drink.
Sure, delegate of Canada. Dear delegates, not to worry, after this moderated caucus is over, we will be having a break for 10 or 15 minutes. So anyways, moving on. Delegate of Australia, could you please lower your hands if there is nothing else to say? Yes, delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Georgia for criticizing Japan for the increase in cow.
Delegate of Japan, since this is a formal debate, criticisms and critiques are welcome in the committee, as long as it is not a direct insult towards the country or the delegate you are delegation you are representing.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, delegate of Thailand.
The delegation of Thailand would like to raise a point of order against the delegation of Japan for abusing the point of order function.
Thank you, delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Japan, you have been warned. Delegates, please do not use the point of order so casually. Make sure you have a good and valid reason for stating a point of order. Anyways, moving on. Next on the list was the delegate of Germany. Delegate of Germany, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks, Chair. The German government has decided to put a price on greenhouse gas emission in the transport and building sector from 2021 as a key instrument to help reach its climate target. For government, carbon pricing is one of the instruments of the climate policy package needed to reduce emissions. Business use internal carbon prices to evaluate the impact of mandatory carbon prices on their operations as a tool to identify the potential climate risk and revenue opportunities. The delegate would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, delegate of Germany. Moving on, the next speaker on the list was the delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Thailand, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. The climate is changing, and the proper debate will be how to deal with these risks. Sea levels are rising approximately 4 millimeters a year, which puts our nation at great danger compared to the global average of 3.3 millimeters. The rising sea levels are causing more floods that destroy and salt our farmlands. This affects our agricultural sector and the 11 million people who rely on it. Thus, the Royal Thai government issued the Climate Change Master Plan, which aims at lowering Thailand's carbon footprint by 25% in the year 2015 until the year 2050. One of the major stands Thailand took is shifting from coal to natural gas, which is one of the cleanest fuels available. This plan was a great success, and now 66% of the total Thai energy production is from natural gas, and only 26% is from coal. We still intend to diversify our energy sources into cleaner options, and with the help of Germany, we started constructing 5 new nuclear plants, which will
The delegate of
provide
Thailand is
1,000...
kindly requested to move to the closing remarks.
Yes. Thailand hopes to create similar initiatives internally and within her neighbors. The delegate here yields to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Thailand. Next on the list is the Delegate of Indonesia. Delegate of Indonesia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech. Delegation. Delegate of Indonesia. Delegate of Indonesia, we are so sorry, but we can't hear you. Sorry, Delegate of Indonesia. Unfortunately, you seem to be having some audio problems. We can't hear you. Delegate of Indonesia, could you please try and reconnect through a different earphone or headphones? In the meantime, yes, Delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of personal privilege to see to a technical issue.
Sure, Delegate of Thailand, we are working on. Yes, Delegate of Turkey.
The delegate of Turkey wanted to be a part of the moderator caucus because I wasn't able to raise the hand during the time.
Delegate of Turkey, first of all, you are requested not to use any personal pronouns. And Delegate of Turkey, if you wish to be added to the moderated caucus, kindly raise a point of personal privilege and ask the chairboard to add the delegation's name into the speakers list. So Delegation of Turkey, could you please raise a motion?
Yeah, sure. The delegate of Turkey would like to raise a point of personal privilege to request the chair to be added in the moderator caucus.
Sure, Delegate of Turkey.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Delegate of Venezuela.
Delegate of Venezuela would like to raise the point of personal privilege to be added to the moderated caucus.
Sure, Delegate of Venezuela. You have been added. Yes, Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Turkey for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Sri Lanka, the chairboard has already warned the delegate of Turkey for using personal pronouns, but thank you. Yes, Delegate of Switzerland.
The delegate of Switzerland would like to raise a motion, raise a point of personal privilege to be added to the moderated caucus.
Sure, Delegate of Switzerland. Yes, Delegate of the Republic of Serbia.
The delegate of Republic of Serbia would like to use the personal privilege to request the chair to be added in the moderated caucus.
Sure, Delegate of Republic of Serbia. Moving back, Delegate of Indonesia, could we please hear your speech if your audio is working perfectly? Delegate of Indonesia. We are so sorry, Delegate of Indonesia, we can't hear you. Delegate of Indonesia, until you can solve your problem, we'll put you towards the end of the speakers list. And hopefully the delegates can solve their audio difficulties by then. So moving on, next, after Indonesia, it was the delegate of India who had been recognized. So delegate of India, you may please proceed with your speech.
Delegate thanks the chair. Global warming creates economic opportunities for India as new technologies and industries required to decarbonize must be developed, manufactured, and deployed at scale. India does not have an expected carbon price or a market-based mechanism such as cap and trade. It does, however, have an array of schemes and mechanisms that put an effective price on carbon. Some of them are Perform, Achieve, and Trade scheme. Under this scheme, energy-intensive units from industrial sectors with high emissions are assigned specific energy reduction targets. The next scheme is Coal Cess. In 2010, the Government of India introduced a tax on coal to be levied as excise duty on items listed in the 10th Schedule to the Finance Act 2010. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of India. Next on the list was the Delegate of, yes, Delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a motion to proceed into a moderated caucus about the topic of adaptation plans. With a total
Delegate of
duration
Thailand, we are still just reached 30 minutes in a 45 minutes moderated caucus, and there are still speakers left to speak in the moderated caucus. So unless and until the chair asks for motions, either for extension or moving back to an unmoderated caucus or general speakers list, please do not raise a motion because we still have time remaining and there are still speakers on the list. I hope it's clear, Delegate of Thailand.
respected chair, may the delegation of Thailand get some time to rephrase.
Yes, Delegate of Thailand.
Yes, we would like to proceed into a motion of a moderated caucus after all the delegates have spoken and finished.
Delegate of Thailand will only be looking for motions after after the moderated caucus is over, and we'll be only voting after the moderated caucus is over. So there is no need to raise a motion right now, but you can raise it after the moderated caucus has been over. Yes, Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Thailand for interrupting the general procedure of the United Nations.
Delegate of Sri Lanka, that's completely all right. Thank you either ways. Yes, Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Thailand for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Thailand, you have been warned. Please refrain from using personal pronouns. Anyways, moving forward, after Delegate of India, it was the Delegate of Mauritius who had been recognized. Delegate of Mauritius, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. As we all know that carbon pricing is a market-based strategy for lowering global warming emissions. The aim is to put a price on carbon emission and actual monetary value. Carbon pricing programs can be implemented through legislative or regulatory action at the local, state, or national level. The fossil fuel which we use are the leading causes of the climate change. In Mauritius has implemented a carbon tax of rupees 360 per ton and adapting alternatives for the following. Carbon pricing is widely considered a powerful and efficient, flexible tool to helping to address the climate change. The delegate of Mauritius would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Mauritius. Next on the list is the Delegate of Bahrain. Delegate of Bahrain, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you for the recognition, Chair. An universal element is carbon, definitely, that makes up this universe. But there are other complications as well. Rise in the emissions of GHG and other carbon products have become menacing. Reports suggest that around 40 billion tons of carbon are being released into the atmosphere every year. Instead of dictating who should reduce emissions, where and how, the delegate of Bahrain believes that a carbon price is the best way to achieve the global target for lower emissions. Placing an adequate price on GHG emissions is of fundamental relevance to climate change on the broadest possible range in setting economic incentives for clean development. The Bahrain government has set a hallmark to net zero carbon emissions in 2016. Being a country where dependency on fossil fuel plays a very important role, the National Efficiency Program aims to reduce the carbon emissions as well as the goal for carbon pricing is on the line of progress. The delegate of Bahrain once again thanks the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Bahrain. Next on the list was the Delegate of Congo. Delegate of Congo, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Respected Chair. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions like CO2 is a crucial component in the fight against climate change. Almost every activity in today's modern world leads to carbon emissions. Carbon trading is a legally binding system that caps the total emissions and allows organizations to trade their allocations. This in principle is a really efficacious way to achieve all our targets, considering the financial situation of today, but theory is far from practice. Rather than stressing on the problems, the Republic of Congo would like to propose a solution. To overcome the major reasons for the unsuccessfulness of the past carbon markets, the Republic of Congo would like to propose a carbon market set up, brought up, and regulated by the UNFCCC. This would create a unified system where every country and every industry would bear a specified cost per permit, a specified carbon cap, a specified set of regulations, and a specified fine if they are not met. If planned and executed to perfection, this initiative can revolutionize the entire global carbon economy. As Leonardo DiCaprio quoted, now is the time
Delegate
for
of Congo is requested to move to closing remarks.
Yes, sir. As Leonardo DiCaprio quoted, now is the time for bold, unprecedented action. He concluded, "You are the last best hope of Earth."
Thank you, Delegate of Congo. Next on the list is the delegate.
Joseph,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Delegate of Republic of Congo, are you open for a question from the executive board?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned about a separate committee being set up by UNFCCC, right?
Yes.
Is UNFCCC within its powers to do so?
I guess we can, extend our powers to that. So it will create, it will, reduce the climate change to a very good extent.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Congo. Yes, Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Norway would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Congo for using the personal pronoun I.
All the delegates have once again been warned not to use any personal pronouns. Thank you, Delegate of Norway. Moving on, we have the Delegate of Turkey. Delegate of Turkey, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks, Chair. Carbon emission is such a serious matter because of the consequences is very unbearable. Carbon pricing is a very important idea that could come to a practice. According to the economists, the effective carbon price must be high enough to make polluters pay for the externalities they generate. The carbon pricing and related carbon market activities are an important policy that can help Turkey meet its sustainable development objectives. And the solution that Turkey is doing to help the climate change is by promoting the use of biomass instead of the fossil fuels and the use of best available agriculture and irrigation techniques. I could like to, I'm sorry, to the delegate of Turkey would yield the floor to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Turkey. Delegates, if you're raising the hands for a point of order against the delegate of Turkey for using a personal pronoun, the chair board has already noted it down and the delegate of Turkey has been warned. Yes, delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Japan for falsely accusing us for using the personal pronoun I. And we take this as a great offense to the sovereignty of Thailand.
Delegate of Thailand, the chairwood believes whenever the delegate of Japan had raised a point of order against any of the delegations for using a personal pronoun, it was purely based on facts and not just simply saying it. So, delegate of Thailand, we apologize if the delegate of Thailand has been offended by the point of orders raised against the country. Anyways, moving on, the next on the speakers list was the delegate of Venezuela. Delegate of Venezuela, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair, for recognition. We know that we are going through a very hard time. Each day, the most distressing words are reaching our ears. But here, we are not helpless. Economists mostly suggest that the best and the cheapest way to reduce carbon emissions is to put a price on them. A carbon tax is actually a toll on like us in roads. But it typically increases the price of gasoline, diesel, coals, etc. It can refrain people from buying those fossil fuels and can efficiently switch them to the use of the renewable energy sources. This not only helps them helps our environment, but it also helps them to invest those resources they use for investing in these non-renewable sources. They can like efficiently use this they can invest this money on like biodegradable, not sorry biodegradable, but
in like
Delegate of Venezuela is kindly requested to conclude.
sorry sir, so here no, carbon taxes may result in slightly slower economic growth, but here the delegate of Venezuela would like to see that we have to sacrifice some of our uh, we have to sacrifice something for the good of our future.
Thank you, Delegate of Venezuela. Yes, Delegate of Canada.
The delegate of Canada would like to raise a point of personal privilege. As I'm facing some
Yes, Delegate of Canada. Delegate of Canada.
The delegate of Canada would like to raise a point of personal privilege. As the delegate of Canada is facing some issues.
Sure, Delegate of Canada, if you would like to take a break for 2 minutes, you may do so and come back. Yes, Delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Venezuela for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Venezuela, you have been warned. Anyways, moving on. Delegate of Switzerland, you have been recognized and you may please proceed your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Carbon pricing is recommended by experts as the most cost-effective tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is almost certainly true for reductions at the margin, but averting dangerous climate change requires more than incremental abatement of emissions. Modeling efforts have pointed to the importance of reaching net zero emissions as soon as possible during this century to avoid the most dangerous effects of global warming. Parties to the Paris Agreement have therefore committed to decarbonization. Collectively, these countries have agreed to the objective of keeping the global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, and of achieving net zero emissions during the second half of the century. Deep decarbonization requires wholesale transformation of the economy, and we argue that the instruments geared toward cost reductions at the margin cannot be expected to achieve such structural change on their own. Nevertheless, carbon pricing is currently being advanced in multiple venues as
Delegate of Switzerland, you're kindly requested to conclude.
Yes, sir. Switzerland's main concern is that such an exclusive focus on carbon pricing could hold back the study and deployment of other necessary mitigation policies and may ironically contribute to stranded assets and higher costs to both emitters and society at large. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Switzerland. Next on the list was the Delegate of Serbia. Delegate of Serbia, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Greetings. Climate changes have recognized as a serious environmental problem which can violate the functioning of human civilization. Global changes demand professional and long-term consideration of its future directions at the national level and adequate management of energy sector development. According to all development scenarios, energy supply represents one of the main issues of sustainable development on a global scale, and its solution is in energy efficiency increase. Plants modernization and use of renewable energy resources. It provides a comparison between the cost and electricity from current commercial technologies and renewable energy technology expected to be commercially available in the future close. The aim is to point out that investment in low emission technology is a profitable investment and that can reduce carbon dioxide emissions in a country that lead to their reduction on the global level. Special emphasis is on carbon dioxide emissions priced on the carbon market, which can encourage project realization focused on larger scale exploitation of renewable energy resources, RES of Serbia.
The Delegate of Republic of Serbia is kindly requested to conclude.
I have concluded.
Thank you, Delegate of Serbia. Yes, Delegate of Morocco.
The delegate of Morocco would like to raise a point of order against the delegate for using the personal pronoun I.
Delegate of Serbia, you have been warned. Okay. Delegate of Indonesia, since the delegate had been facing some audio issues, is the delegate back? Delegate of Indonesia, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Delegate of Indonesia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Okay. Carbon pricing refers to initiatives that put an explicit price on GHG emissions. This is a price expressed as a value per ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. Considering different carbon pricing approaches, an emissions trading system on the one hand provides certainty about the environmental impact, but the price remains flexible. A carbon tax, on the one hand, guarantees the carbon price in the economic system against an uncertain environmental outcome. Other main types of carbon pricing offset mechanisms, result-based climate finance, and internal carbon prices set by organizations. Scaling up GHG emission reductions and lowering the cost of mitigation is crucial to decarbonize economies.
Delegate of Indonesia, if the delegate is done with the speech, the delegate is kindly requested to yield the floor back to the chair. Delegate of Indonesia.
Delegate of Indonesia would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Indonesia. Seeing that Delegate of Indonesia was our last speaker and the time for the moderated caucus has elapsed, delegates, we are now looking for motions for a break, to suspend the meeting for a break. So at this point of time, are there any motions on the floor? Yes, the delegate of Jordan.
The delegate of Jordan would like to raise the motion to move into an unmoderated caucus with a total time period of 20 minutes.
Delegate of Jordan, this motion is not in order because the chair is specifically looking for motions to suspend the meeting for a break, because we will be moving forward with a break for 10 or 15 minutes. So at this point of time, are there any motions on the floor for the suspension of debate for break? Yes, Delegate of Mexico.
The delegation of Mexico would like to raise a motion to suspend the meeting for a break for a period of 10 minutes.
This motion is in order, Delegate of Mexico. Delegates who are in, delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? Thank you, delegates. Please lower your hands. Are there any objections to this motion? Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing both seconds and objections, this motion shall now be put into vote. Delegates who are in favor of passing the motion may please raise their virtual hands. Thank you, delegates. Delegates who are delegates, please lower your hands. Delegates who are not in favor of the motion are kindly requested to raise their virtual hands. Seeing an absolute majority, this motion has been passed and the committee suspended for a break of 10 minutes. So delegates, by 12:10, I expect all the delegates to be back here because we will be moving forward with the break. And delegates, if you wish to stay back and clarify a few doubts with the chairboard, you may feel free to do so. Otherwise, all the delegates are free to go on a break. And all of you are expected to come back within 10 minutes. In exactly 10 minutes, please return back to the floor. Also, delegates, yes, you may please feel free to go.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Chair.
Also, delegates, since all of you are present here, I've chosen present and voting during the roll call. You cannot abstain from voting. So all delegates who are in favor of the motion, kindly raise your virtual hands. All right, thank you, delegates. Please lower your hands. Delegates who are objecting this motion are kindly requested to raise their hands. Delegates who are not in favor of this motion. Thank you, delegates. Seeing absolute majority, this motion has been passed, and the time for the time for the individual speakers' time in the general speakers list is now 2 minutes in total. Vice Chair, are you present?
Yes.
Vice Chair.
Yes, Chair, I'm present.
All right, that's wonderful. So delegates who would like to add their names to the general speakers list, may please raise their virtual hands. And please be reminded, delegates who have already spoken once during the GSL are kindly requested not to. Yes, Vice Chair, you may take the first 10 speakers from your screen and let me know so I can add it to the website only.
The delegate of India, you have been recognized. The delegate of Bahrain.
Bahrain.
The delegate of Canada.
Canada.
The delegate of Switzerland.
Delegate of Switzerland. Yeah.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
The delegate of UK.
Delegate of UK.
The delegate of Albania.
Delegate of Albania.
The
delegate of Albania, you have already been recognized in the first round and your chance will come. So delegate of Albania, kindly refrain from raising your hand this time. Thank you, delegate of Albania. And delegates who have already been recognized, kindly lower your hands. Yes, Vice Chair, you may continue.
Yes, the delegate of Czech Republic.
Delegate of Czech Republic.
Delegate of Venezuela.
Delegate of Venezuela.
And the delegate of Poland.
And the delegate of Poland. All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Delegates, not to worry, you will get your chance to the GSL. There are 2 days. And if you have not been recognized yet in the first round and the second round, not to worry at all. This is a personal guarantee from the chairboard. All of you will be getting a chance to speak. So Vice Chair, you may please start with the delegate of France and we can proceed.
The delegate of France, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Honorable Chairperson, distinguished delegates. The delegate of France stands before this conference not only as a representative, but as a concerned citizen who suffer the challenges of climate change. The Paris Agreement is a binding document signed by 195 countries to mitigate the climate change crisis. France is a country with over 65.67 million people and a GDP of 2,690 billion US dollars. The state has spent $69.4 billion for promoting sustainable energy, becoming one of the lowest carbon emitters in the EU at 4.62 metric tons in 2020. Unfortunately, it has fallen short in its commitments made in the agreement. In the country, the highest carbon emitting sector is transport, over 39%, and 96% of users own gasoline cars. This is an obstacle, and France tried to convince people to shift to EVs by providing subsidies for them, but this was not fully achieved. In spite of all the difficulties, it has a clear vision to achieve carbon neutrality by 2040. Delegates, the time has come to change the word goal to reality. Take action than mere pledges and make the world a better place for posterity. Save the planet before it's too late. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Delegate, seeing that you have extra time, would you like to yield the time back to the chair or for POIs?
The delegate of France would like to yield the remaining time for points of information.
All those who wish to ask the delegate of France points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Yes, the delegate of Venezuela.
Yes, Chair.
Would you like to ask a point of information to the delegate of France?
No, sorry, Chair.
Okay. Yes, the delegate of Congo.
The delegate of Republic of Congo would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of France by inquiring what France, a very rich country, with less than nominal emissions has done to help other poor countries achieve their NDCs?
Delegate of France, you may answer.
The delegate of France would like to answer the point of information raised by the delegate of the Republic of Congo. France has committed to donating 3 billion in 2015 to 5 billion euros in 2020 to help the most vulnerable countries. Instead of donating only 5 billion, it exceeded its commitment, contributing more than 7 billion euros to vulnerable countries. In addition to that, France started movements such as the One Planet Summits in partnership with the respective UN and the World Bank to mobilize finance to effectively combat climate change. This also additionally funded third world countries to start their research and innovations against climate change. The delegate of France hopes that he has answered the delegate of Republic of Congo's question perfectly. The delegate thanks the chair.
Thank you, delegate. The next on the speakers list is the delegate of Albania. The delegate of Albania, you have been recognized. Please proceed with your speech.
A delegate of Albania, just before that, all delegates who have nothing to speak, please lower your hands, as this might create confusion for the chair as well. So delegates, until and unless you have been asked to raise your virtual hands for anything, please do not raise them.
The delegate of Norway has a point of order.
Vice Chair.
Yes, delegate of Ghana. No, the delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Norway would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of France for using the personal pronoun he.
The delegate of France, you have been warned. Please refrain from using personal pronouns. Thank you, delegate of Norway. Next on the speakers list is the delegate of Albania. You have been recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for the recognition. The Republic of Albania is a signatory party of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. In line with UNFCCC guidelines, Albania prepared a document outlining the actions planned to undertake to address climate change, also known as Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC, in 2015. Albania signed the Paris Agreement, the most ambitious multilateral climate change agreement, in April 2016. Albania aims to reduce emissions relative to business as usual by 2030 with the implementation of mitigation actions in the main emitting sectors of the country: energy, agriculture, waste and land use change, and forestry, LULUCF. The inclusion of agriculture, waste, and LULUCF are an enhancement since the first NDC only covered energy. Some of the mitigation measures in the energy sector are efficient transport system, energy labeling of new vehicles, improving the energy performance in buildings, reduction of transmission and distribution losses by promotion of distributed generation, reduction of emissions from industries based on energy efficiency, transition process towards diversification away from hydropower, and promote alternative sources of renewable energy sources in transport, etc.
Has the delegate of Albania concluded? If so, would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
The delegate of Albania would like to yield the time to any points of information.
All those who wish to ask the delegate of Albania points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Yes, the delegate of Egypt, you have been recognized.
The delegate of Egypt would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of Albania by stating that it has been noted with much dismay that corruption is a huge problem in Albania. So what is the guarantee that the world nations receive, that in case Albania receive any help from other countries, what is the guarantee that it will be put to effective use and not taken up by any corrupt government officials?
Yes, delegate of Albania, you may answer the delegate of Egypt's question.
The corruption rates in Albania are still a question, but Albania, being a poor country, is planning to address
the query raised, and Albania is trying to take up the mentioned mitigation techniques by the funding by the nations in response to the query.
Thank you, Delegate of Albania. Next on the speakers list is the Delegate of Japan. The Delegate of Japan, you have been recognized. Before that, the Delegate of Morocco. Why have you raised your hand? Okay. Okay, seeing that there are no more raised hands, the Delegate of Japan, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
The Delegate of Japan thanks the Chair. Good morning to the Honorable Chair and all delegates present here. The Delegate of Japan is extremely delighted to be here to discuss a common challenge of humankind. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres states, the state of the planet is broken. Yes, delegates, humanity is waging war on nature, and nature is striking back with a growing force and fury. We are witnessing unprecedented climate extremes in every region or on every continent. The past decade was the hottest in the human history. Every 10th of a degree of warming matters, and to tackle this challenge of climate change, Japan has bold and ambitious goals. Net zero by 2050, Japan will realize this goal under our newly adopted long-term strategy. To bring about a decarbonized society, Japan will promote the development of innovative technologies, introduce renewable energy as much as possible, and convert existing thermal power generations into zero-emission power generation. Japan has reformed our coal-fired power policy, including ceasing construction of new coal power plants in achieving a fossil-free society. Japan plans to develop negative emission technologies to capture and store carbon dioxide. Japan is committed to $100 billion per year goal of climate finance. Together with high ambitions, let us all do what we can to go forward. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
The delegate of Japan would like to yield the remaining time to the points of information.
All those who wish to ask the Delegate of Japan points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Yes, Delegate of Bangladesh.
The Delegate of Bangladesh would like to raise a point of information to the Delegate of Japan, stating that the Delegate of Japan had mentioned about the long-term strategies to achieve net zero by 2050. Could the Delegate of Japan please elaborate the long-term strategy?
The Delegate of Japan seeks the permission of the chair to answer the question raised by the Delegate of Bangladesh.
Yes, you may answer the question.
The delegate thanks the chair. The long-term strategy plan that was established in Japan with the goal set for 2030. So this plan, it aimed to reduce the coal use from 32% to 26% and to increase the renewables from 17 to 24%. And as a part of this goal, Japan has also announced a goal of shutting down 100 old, low efficiency and coal-fired power plants of 140 coal-fired power plants. The Japanese government has also declared its focus to promote existing technologies and the development of key new technologies such as the next generation solar batteries and carbon recycling as a part of this strategic plan. The delegate thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Yes, Delegate of Philippines. May I know why your hand is raised?
The Delegate of Philippines would like to raise a point of information against the Delegate of Japan.
Seeing that the time has elapsed, you will not be allowed to ask your points of information. Thus, we'll be moving on to our next speaker, which is the Delegate of Egypt. The Delegate of Egypt, you have been recognized.
Thanks to the chair. Good morning, delegates. This is the Delegate of Egypt. Egypt is a beautiful country spanning across the northeast corner of Africa. Egypt's recent past has not been the brightest, as it once used to be. But under the esteemed guidance of the President Abdul Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt is expected to reach its past glory it once had. Sir Abdul Fattah el-Sisi, the President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, considers climate change to be a huge problem and ensures that the government works very hard to control and to eventually mitigate climate change. Egypt has joined the Paris Climate Agreement and has been working very hard to achieve all their nationally determined contributions. The government of Egypt also has ensured that the development is holistic and not just restricted to one sector of the economy. But the most depressing fact is that unlike Egypt, many countries are not working as hard to control global climate change. In fact, it has been noted by the delegate that countries with the most sophisticated and advanced scientific technologies are the largest global carbon dioxide contributors. This could be considered as one of the biggest drawbacks of the Paris Climate Agreement, as it gives countries a liberty to set their own goals, which leads to some countries not working towards it, while other countries whose pledges are far too low than what they can actually achieve. With that, the delegate would like to conclude. Thanks to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
For points of information, please.
All those who wish to ask the Delegate of Japan points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Delegate of India, you have been recognized.
The Delegate of India would like to ask a point of information to the Delegate of Egypt. Global warming results in sea level rise due to the melting of glaciers and Arctic ice. Egypt is particularly due to its low altitude Nile Delta. What actions are taken by the government in protection of Nile?
The delegate of Egypt seeks the permission of the chair to answer the point of information.
Yes, you may answer the point of information.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously the question stated by the delegate of India is very valid. It has been noted that the sea levels across the world are rising, and Egypt has come up with some very solid methodologies to mitigate and control climate change. First and foremost, the delegate of Egypt would like to state about the national strategy for adaptation to climate change. That is, all the adverse effects of climate change are to be controlled and eventually mitigated and adapt accordingly by the strategy. Also, in the energy sector, there is a national renewable energy strategy. For transportation sector, there is the Egypt Sustainable Transportation Program, and to reduce carbon dioxide emissions of the industries, there are also many other actions and projects taken up by the Egyptian government to protect the Nile Delta. With that, the delegate would like to conclude. Thanks to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Egypt. Seeing that the time has elapsed, we will not be receiving any more POIs for the Delegate of Egypt. So all those who wish to ask, please lower your hand. Yes, Delegate of Japan. Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of Egypt.
Since the time has elapsed, we will not be receiving any more points of information for the Delegate of Egypt. Yes, Delegate of Thailand.
The delegation of Thailand would like to raise a motion to extend the individual speaking time to 2 minutes 30 seconds.
Delegate of Thailand, under the discretionary power of the chair, will not be going forward with this motion for two reasons. One is that we are on a time crunch and we are trying to finish the session by the end of 2 p.m. And another reason being that we want all the delegates to get an equal chance to speak. And we have already extended the time from 1 minute 30 seconds to 2 minutes already, just so that other people can answer more points of information. So, Delegate of Thailand, the chair board humbly apologizes because we will not be looking forward with this motion. I hope it's clear, Delegate of Thailand.
Thank you, Chair. Next on the speakers list is the Delegate of India. The Delegate of India, you have been recognized. Please proceed.
The delegate thanks the chair. Honorable Chair, esteemed delegates, good afternoon. The less we do to address climate change now, the more regulations we will have in the future. The Paris Agreement sets out a global framework to avoid dangerous climate change by limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It also aims to strengthen countries' ability to deal with the impacts of climate change and support them in their efforts. The Paris Agreement can create 24 million new jobs, according to a report by International Labour Organization. India is up to date its 2030 climate targets under the Paris Agreement. It is considering cutting down almost by half the amount of greenhouse gases produced for every dollar of economic activity by the end of the decade. India is well on track to achieve its Paris Agreement targets well before the target date of 2030. The Paris Accord aims to keep the increase in average temperatures worldwide well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. The delegate of India would like to conclude by saying that Earth has enough resources to meet people's needs, but will never have enough to satisfy people's greed. All countries must promote sustainable production processes and also sustainable lifestyles all across the globe. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of India. Would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
The delegate of India would like to yield the time for the point of informations.
All those who wish to ask the Delegate of India points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Delegate of Philippines, you have been recognized.
The delegate of Philippines would like to raise a point of information against the delegate of India. Okay.
Yes, Delegate of Philippines, you may proceed.
The success of achieving targets seems really astonishing in words that the delegate of India just said. But when we talk about Delhi, which is being tortured by the pollution, the higher end pollution, to be honest, we have to say it in that way. Delhi is being polluted really hard. People strive to breathe. So what is the explanation for this about Delhi, delegate of India? Thank you.
The delegate of India would like to answer the point of information. In 2020, based on the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission, the government of India has set aside about $1.7 billion to fight air pollution in Delhi over the next 5 years for the 42 Indian cities that have million-plus populations, provided they reduce their air pollution levels by 15% every year. Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. This umbrella law enables the central government to take measures it deems necessary to protect and improve the environment and to prevent, control, and abate environmental pollution.
Thank you, Delegate of India. We will not be receiving any more points of information for the Delegate of India. All those who wish to ask, please lower your hands. Yes, Delegate of Albania. Delegate of Albania. Okay, seeing that Delegate of Albania is currently not available. Okay, she has lowered her hand. We're moving on to our next speaker, which is the Delegate of Bahrain. The Delegate of Bahrain, you have been recognized.
Thanks for the recognition, Honorable Chair and Vice Chair. We, Bahrain, besides producing some considerable amount of petroleum products, are also an important hub for finance and marketing. We are a small developing island state where the coastline as well as the landmass has increased considerably over the last 30 years by 15%. Our total population is over 1.5 million, living in a high urban density context within a comparatively small landmass. The country's grip over the water sources has also decreased at a worrisome rate. Rapid urbanization, population boom are notably some of the striking hindrances to achieve our share of climate change. The government of Bahrain has taken some combat measures that proves to be imperative. The National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, NEEAP, launched in 2017 under the identification of 22 initiatives, The National Renewable Energy Action Plan to identify feasible renewable sources from sun, wind, and biogas, a National Adaptation Investment Plan on climate change, the Coastal Resilience to Sea Level Rise, the reactivation of Water Resource Council and its establishment of the Water Resource Management Unit, National Plan for Forestation. There the dramatic end note goes, we have borrowed the earth from our children and have not inherited it from our fathers. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Bahrain. Would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
The Delegate of Bahrain would like to yield the remaining time to points of information.
All those who wish to ask the Delegate of Bahrain points of information, please raise your virtual hand. Yes, Delegate of Saudi Arabia, you have been recognized.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia would like to raise a point of information to the delegate of the Kingdom of Bahrain by stating that Kingdom of Bahrain is a small country, but how climate change has affected it so far?
Delegate of Bahrain, you may please answer.
The Delegate of Bahrain would like to answer the point of information raised by the Delegate of Saudi Arabia. The whole world is in a state of emergency where all of us are affected by this increase in temperature, particularly in Bahrain. The adaptation plan has become very necessary with the destruction in the mangrove forest in the Tubli Bay Observatory. Besides that, as stated in the GSL, the current water situation in Bahrain is not sustainable. Hence, the establishment of the Water Resource Management Unit was so very much necessary. And the coastal resilience to sea level rise in Bahrain has been very remarkable because its degradation policies have become are being developed and will proceed in the future years. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Bahrain. Since the time has elapsed, all those who wish to ask POIs to the Delegate of Bahrain, please lower your hands. Yes, Delegate of Morocco. Okay. Yes, Delegate of Thailand.
The Delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of applause to the Delegate of Bahrain on their excellent response.
Been recognized.
Delegate
We'll
of
be
Bahrain
moving
would
on
like to recognize the applause from the Delegate of Thailand.
Yes, that's it. All. We are moving on to our next speaker now, which is the Delegate of Canada. The Delegate of Canada, you may please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair. Honorable Chair, esteemed delegates, and distinguished guests. Climate change is a defining issue for time. The country of Canada has played a leadership role in reaching an agreement with 194 parties to address climate change. It has been around 5 years since Canada ratified the Paris Agreement. In November 2015, Canada has announced a historic pledge of 2.65 billion Canadian dollars in climate finance over a period of 5 years. This contribution represents Canada's largest climate finance contribution ever. This will greatly benefit developing countries transitioning to possibly low carbon economies and help building resilience to impacts of climate change. The effective implementation of the Paris Agreement would be beneficial to both the world and Canada as an entity. Our country's science-based reports, Canada's Changing Climate, published in April 2019, indicates that warming in Canada is occurring at twice the global average speed. Canada's north is actually warming 3 times that rate. Canada is proud to be a part of international efforts to increase cooperation in climate ambition. And Canada also delivers on its commitment to support developing countries, including ensuring responsiveness of small island states and coastal communities. By establishing robust rules here at this conference, we must take steps to decrease climate change. We will come forward with legislation that commits us to a net zero goal with milestones every 5 years. Indigenous communities are the first to feel the impacts of climate change. Canada strongly supports respect for human rights and the rights of Indigenous peoples and implementation of Paris Agreement. Together, we will build an environmentally and economically sustainable world. Thank you. The delegate would like to yield the floor to the points of information.
All those who wish to ask points of information, please raise your virtual hand. Yes, delegate of Cuba, you have been recognized.
Delegate of Cuba would like to raise a point of information to Delegate of Canada by stating that Canada is one of the largest GDP in the world, but Canada is spending very less on the climate change. Why it is so? Can Delegate of Canada elaborate?
The delegate of Canada would like to answer.
Yes, delegate of Canada, you may proceed.
So as Canada is one of the largest GDP nations in the world, we still have our own priorities as well as climate change. We have taken lots of steps internationally and on an international level and on a national level. We have done acts for our own country as well, because Canada is facing, as a country located near the Arctic Circle, we face much more issues pertaining to global warming than countries near the equator or other countries face. So we must take steps and build climate resilient infrastructure and develop our own country, as well as we fund global countries, and we also respond to small islands. We have ensured that we must respond to island states and other countries which do not have proper help or proper income to tackle climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate of Canada. Now we are moving on to our next speaker, which is the delegate of Switzerland. The delegate of Switzerland, you may proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Switzerland joined the Paris Climate Agreement in October 2020. The agreement allows Switzerland to offset CO2 emissions by financing projects in the partner countries. This is another step Switzerland has taken to reach a more suitable climate for the country. There has been a 1 degree increase in the temperature in the higher mountain regions of Europe. In Switzerland, a 1 degree Celsius increase would reduce snowfall on the slopes by 10%, and in the Alps, the years 1994, 2000, 2002, and 2003 were the warmest in the past 500 years. If this trend continues, as research predicts, Switzerland may suffer from landslides, floods, a decrease in winter tourism, and a negative effect on agriculture. The CAT rates Switzerland's climate targets, policies, and finance as insufficient. The insufficient ratings indicates that Switzerland's climate policies and commitments need substantial improvements to be consistent with the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degree Celsius temperature limit. Switzerland's 2030 domestic emissions reduction target is consistent with keeping the warming below, but not well below 2 degrees Celsius. If fully implemented, Switzerland's current policies would fall short of achieving this target. This emissions trajectory is consistent with between 2 to 3 degrees Celsius of warming if all countries took a similar approach. Switzerland is also not meeting its fair share contributions to climate change mitigation, and in addition to strengthening its targets and policies, also needs to provide additional support to others. On the other hand, the Climate Action Network Europe ranked Switzerland 13th out of 57 countries in the 2011 Climate Change Performance Index. The Swiss Parliament ratified the Paris Climate Agreement on Climate Change in 2020, which aims to combat global warming by reducing carbon and greenhouse emissions. Switzerland was the 115th country to ratify the agreement. Industrialized countries—
The delegate of Switzerland is requested to give the closing remarks.
Yes, Chair. Switzerland and EU have pledged to reduce their emissions by 8%. To reach this goal, Switzerland passed the CO2 Act that sets the goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 10%. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair.
Seeing that the delegate of Switzerland has elapsed, we will not be receiving it. Has elapsed the time, we will not be receiving any more PA of points of information for the delegate of Switzerland. We'll be moving on to the next speaker. That is the delegate of Papua New Guinea. The delegate of Papua New Guinea, you have been recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Climate change, the reason for the instability of nature and natural phenomena. The Arctic recording its lowest winter maximum and the oceans being the most acidic and the warmer than it was ever recorded proves the effects of climate change. The global picture is grim and it's time we wake up. A very good afternoon to the respected chair, the delegates and the audience present here. The delegate of Papua New Guinea thanks the chair for granting an opportunity to speak on this topic, which is very important and relevant in our global picture. Papua New Guinea, being a developing country, does not have enough resources to implement the Paris Climate Treaty efficiently to meet the Paris climate goals of limiting average global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius in time. Since Papua New Guinea is a developing country, climate change will affect it more than the developed countries. Results of climate change like floods, droughts, hurricanes, etc. will be harmful in terms of food and water security, displacement, and economic development also. A new study by the World Bank estimates that without action, climate change would push more than 100 million people internationally into extreme poverty by 2030. The government of Papua New Guinea has recently released its enhanced nationally determined contributions in December 2020. The Paris Climate Agreement is a huge step towards fighting climate change, but it definitely is not the best. The delegate once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, delegate. Would you like to yield your time back to the chair or for any points of information?
Points of information. The delegate would like to yield the time back to the time for points of information.
All those who wish to ask the delegate of Papua New Guinea points of information, please raise your virtual hands. Yes, delegate of Sri Lanka, you have been recognized.
Delegate of Sri Lanka thanks the chair. Increasing temperatures coupled with diminishing freshwater sources and persistent droughts hamper agricultural processes at the cornerstone of the Papua New Guinea economy and the population's livelihood. By 2030, the country's temperature will increase by up to 1.1 Celsius per year. Rising temperatures threaten to cut in half the production of staple root crops such as sweet potatoes over the next 3 decades. What does the government of Papua New Guinea plan to do to tackle this?
And the delegate of Papua New Guinea would like to receive permission from the chair to answer.
Yes, you may proceed.
The government of Papua New Guinea and the Wildlife Conservation Society have collaborated under the Darwin Initiative to diversify their access to improve the crop varieties and farming practices in order to reduce the unsustainable harvest. The project includes a series of capacity building activities and targets communities where this is affecting most. This project aims to help farmers yield a large harvest using ways like quality seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides. Moreover, the country's enhanced nationally determined contributions in 2020 is another great leap. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. Now, due to time constraints, we are looking for a motion to move into the moderated caucus. So from here on, our chair, Joseph, will be taking over.
The delegate has a point of order.
Yes, delegate of Norway.
The delegate would like to raise a point of order to all the delegates who are raising their hands even before the chair calling upon for the points of information.
Well, thank you so much, delegate of Norway. Dear delegates, please refrain from raising your hands unless and until the chair has asked for a point of motion on the floor. And if the delegates have a point of personal privilege or a point of order to be raised, you may feel free to do so. But unless and until we have asked for virtual hands to be seen, all delegates are requested to refrain from raising them. So, delegate of Albania, yes, may I know why your virtual hand is raised?
The delegate of Albania had raised the virtual hand in response to the vice chair's question of any points or motions on the floor.
All right, delegate of Albania. Since you have been recognized already, yes, delegate of Albania, you may please state your motion.
The delegate of Albania would like to raise a motion to suspend the GSL and move into a moderated caucus on the topic adoption practices and climate resilient development for a total duration of 45 minutes and individual speaker time of 90 seconds.
This motion is now in order. Delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? All right. Delegates, are there any objections to this motion? Seeing both seconds and objections, this motion shall now be put into vote. All delegates are kindly requested to lower their hands. Now, delegates who are in favor of this motion, kindly raise. Seeing absolute majority, this motion has been passed, and the topic for the moderated caucus is set as adaptation practices for a total time period of 45 minutes and individual speakers' time being 90 seconds. May I know the delegate whose motion it was passed?
The delegate of Albania.
All right, delegate of Albania, since it was your motion that had been passed, would you like to be the first or last speaker on the speakers list?
The delegate of Albania would like to be the last on the speakers list.
All right, delegate of Albania, you would like to be the last person on the speakers list. Or now, delegates who would like to enroll themselves into the moderated caucus speakers list are kindly requested to raise their virtual hands. Rapporteur, could you please let me know the delegates on the screen who have raised their virtual hands?
Yes, the delegate of.
One second, just 1 second. All right. Yes, Rapporteur, you may please.
The delegate of Armenia.
Delegate of Armenia. Delegates, once you hear your name being called upon, you're kindly requested to lower your hands as well. Delegate of Armenia.
The delegate of Morocco.
Delegate of Morocco.
The delegate of France.
Delegate of France.
The delegate of Switzerland.
Delegate of Switzerland.
The delegate of Norway.
Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Australia.
Delegate of Australia.
The delegate of Germany.
Delegate of Germany.
The delegate of India.
Delegate of India.
The delegate of Bahrain.
Delegate of Bahrain.
The delegate of Japan.
Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Bangladesh.
Delegate of Bangladesh.
The delegate of Jordan.
Delegate of Jordan.
The delegate of Egypt.
Delegate of Egypt.
The delegate of Sri Lanka.
Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea.
Kenya.
The delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia.
The delegate of Thailand.
Delegate of
The delegate of Czech Republic. The delegate of China. The delegate of Canada. The delegate of Cuba. The delegate of Mongolia.
I'm sorry, Rapporteur, I didn't get the last one.
The delegate of Mongolia. The delegate of Congo. The delegate of Cuba. The delegate of UK. The delegate of Philippines. The delegate of Mauritius. The delegate of Mexico. The delegate of Georgia. The delegate of Ghana. The delegate of Belgium. The delegate of Maldives. And the delegate of Indonesia.
Thank you so much, Rapporteur. Delegates, if there are no more speakers to be added into the list, I kindly request you to to lower your virtual hands. All right, that's perfect. So as stated before, the topic for the moderated caucus is adoption practices. The total duration will be 45 minutes and the speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds. Yes, delegate of Thailand, may I ask why the delegate has raised their hands?
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of privilege for using 2 accounts and would urge the judges to recognize the second.
Sure, delegate of Thailand. Are both your accounts already in the panelist list or is one of them in the attendees? Delegate of Thailand?
Yes, Chair.
Are both your accounts already in the panelist list?
Yes.
All right, that's perfect, delegate of Thailand. Anyways, moving on with our moderated caucus. The first speaker on the moderated caucus list is the delegate of Armenia. Delegate of Armenia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Making efforts to keep the temperature rise well below 1.5 degrees Celsius is undoubtedly the need of the hour. But what if it fails? Thus, adaptation proves to be vital and should be continued parallelly. Adaptation cannot be an afterthought to development. Instead, by integrating it into the policy thinking upfront, governments can catalyze robust economic development while also reducing vulnerability to climate change. For Armenia, prioritizing climate resilient growth and pursuing sustainable green policies and business practices, particularly in the forestry sector, is the necessity. The assessments on forest landscape restoration is an important factor. Green Armenia, G for growth, R for recovery, to empower, E for empower, equip, and nurture platform, which is established together with development partners, including the World Bank, to support and advocate for Armenia's green recovery and transformation. Moreover, the Green Armenia platform incubate innovative ideas, harness technological opportunities, and tap into global knowledge. Such efforts will be central to helping Armenia preserve its forest resources, which are crucial for meeting the country's international climate change mitigation and adaptation commitments, and to build forward better, creating a sustainable, resilient recovery for all Armenians. Thank you. The delegate of Armenia would like to yield the floor back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate of Armenia. Next on the list is the delegate of Morocco. Delegate of Morocco, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Greetings to one and all present here. The world is already experiencing changes in average temperature, shifts in the seasons, and an increasing frequency of extreme weather events and other climate change impacts and slow onset events. The faster the climate changes and the longer the adaptation efforts are put off, the more difficult and more expensive it could be. Morocco has taken help from the NAP and many more sectors to get some funds to make its society a better version. Moroccan government has made sure that all these funds have been put into use and to achieve the goal of the country. The country has implemented several plans and have several policies which are strictly being followed by the citizens. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, delegate of Morocco. Next on the list is the delegate of France. Delegate of France, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech. Yes, delegate of Austria.
Chair, the delegate of Austria would like to raise the point of personal privilege to use washroom.
Sure, delegate of Austria, you may feel free to do so. Yes, delegate of Thailand.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of applause for the speech made by the delegation of Morocco.
Thank you, delegate of Thailand. That is appreciated. Next, yes, delegate of Georgia.
Delegate of Georgia to raise percentage to use washroom.
Sure, delegate of Georgia, you may feel free to do so. Moving on, the next speaker on the speakers list is the delegate of France. Delegate of France, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, climate resilience is not a vision. It is an action not to be taken after 20 or 30 years, but now. France is a developed country having a fair share in the fight against climate change. It brought in numerous policies and actions to adapt to climate change. One such policy is the Climate Action and Resilience Law 2021, which is a stronghold against climate change. This brought in many changes, such as zero production of polluting cars, usage of electronic rail for domestic travel, environmental labeling of goods and services that monitor CO2 emissions, and using sustainable methods in building infrastructure to reduce carbon footprint. In addition to this, many environmental organizations, such as Friends of the Earth France, also boost the country's ambitious dream of becoming carbon neutral. Climate change is like time. It waits for no one. Delegates, remember this. There's no when or after some time. There's only now. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of France. Yes, Delegate of Canada.
The delegate of Canada would like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry. Can questions be asked for the general speakers list after the delegates have finished speaking in the WhatsApp group?
Delegate of Canada, I think you're referring to the substantial chits that have been going on in the WhatsApp group now, right?
Yes.
Yes, Delegate of Canada. If a delegate did not get a chance to ask a question after being yielded to the points of information, then you can raise your questions through substantial chats as it has been going down in the WhatsApp group. So you may tag any of the EP members, which is either me, the Vice Chair, or the Rapporteur. Ask a question to the delegate and mention which delegation you are representing. And delegates, this information is for everyone. All the delegates are kindly requested to answer the points of information raised in the WhatsApp group as well, as it will help you score points during the conference. I hope it is clear, Delegate of Canada.
Yes.
Thank you, Delegate of Canada. Yes, Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan has a parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Delegate of Japan.
Till what time will the chits be open?
The chits will be open until this moderated caucus is over, because by the time this moderated caucus is over, we will be looking forward for the suspension of the committee for today, since we will be reaching 2 o'clock by then. So before the committee has been suspended for the day, all the delegates are requested to answer the points of information raised through the chats. Yes, Delegate of Egypt.
The delegate of Egypt has a parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Delegate of Egypt.
So the questions raised, the POI is raised towards the delegate of Egypt. Can it also be answered tomorrow before the session as well?
No, Delegate of Egypt. Whatever points of information are there in the WhatsApp group today are to be answered today itself, before the committee closes, which is 2 p.m. So all delegates are requested to provide your answers or questions in the WhatsApp group before 2 p.m. itself. Okay, I hope it is clear, delegate. 2 p.m. Saudi Arabian time. All right. Moving on, next in the speakers list is the delegate of Switzerland. Delegate of Switzerland, you have been recognized, and you may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Climate change is a common problem faced by nearly every country on Earth. Therefore, each country has to take its own steps for the prevention of environmental issues. One of the best steps any country can take is to increase the tree cover in area. This helps to battle the heat island effect, one of the most devastating side effects of global warming. Significantly expanding tree coverage will help in improving the urban biodiversity and ecosystem connectivity. Community gardens help increase water retention while encouraging community building and local conservation. Switzerland is building an urban gardening network to help with the district level regeneration efforts. Greening rooftops to reduce summer heat, provide winter insulation, and reduce storm water runoff. Green rooftops have helped slow storm water runoff by 36%, increasing permeable surfaces and wetlands to increase natural infiltration of rainwater and will reduce storm water runoff. Spawn cities pilot aims to capture, reuse, or absorb up to 80% of stormwater runoff in urban areas by 2030. These are some of the measures taken by countries in the name of reducing climate change. I'd like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Switzerland. Next on the list is the Delegate of Norway. Delegate of Norway, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. Norway's weather is extremely varied, the rugged topography being one of the main reasons for large differences over short distances. In Norway, SINTEF, an independent institution developing technical design guidelines that reaches out to almost all actors in the construction industry. And academic institutions like NTNU also have an important role to play in the development of strategies aiming at building awareness of future risks of climate change and in the developments of precautionary and cost-beneficial adaptation measures. The building regulations obviously be a central instrument in Norwegian climate adaptation policy. All 426 municipalities of Norway contributes to long-term adaptation measures. The Directorate for Civil Protection and Emergency Planning and the Directorate for Building Quality have a common responsibility to initiate collective efforts by institutions to reduce climate vulnerability in the built environment. The development of construction products industries and the continued development of Norwegian standards, especially associated with the various types of climatic impact, are thereby important factors to be considered. The delegate yields back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Norway. Next on the list is the Delegate of Australia. Delegate of Australia, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with your speech.
The Delegate of Australia thanks the chair. Countries and communities need to develop adaptation solutions and implement action to respond to the impacts of climate change that are already happening, as well as prepare for the future impacts. Australia is already experiencing the effects of a changing climate. Australia's adaptation action is underpinned by science, and we have actively support climate science programs and ensure information is applied in resilience building and adaptation initiatives. The new National Climate Resilience and Adaptation Strategy provides a path towards a climate resilient Australia. The strategy sets out what the Australian government will do to support efforts across all levels of the government, business and community to better anticipate, manage and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Australian government agencies are also integrating disaster and climate resilience in their policies, programs and asset management. The Delegate of Australia once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Australia. Next on the list, yes, Delegate of Egypt.
Delegate of Egypt would once again like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Sure, Delegate of Egypt.
So is the personal pronoun you permitted in the meeting?
Delegate of Egypt, when you're talking to a delegate directly, you're not allowed to use the personal pronoun you. So if I have to refer to you, which is the Delegate of Egypt, I'll have to say Delegate of Egypt. This is the point you have raised. I can't say you have raised this point. I hope it is clear, Delegate of Egypt.
Yes, Chair. But then the Delegate of Egypt would like to raise a point of order against the EB members for using the word you.
Sure, Delegate of Egypt, the EB members apologize. All right. Next on the speakers list is the Delegate of Germany. Yes, Delegate of China.
The delegate of China would like to raise a point of personal privilege. Is it possible that a delegate, if something urgent has came up, they would need to leave the meeting before the session gets over? Can they?
Delegate of China, yes. If you do have something urgent that you have to attend to, the delegate is more than, please feel free to leave the meeting.
Yes, and is it possible that the delegate's turn in the moderated caucus comes sooner?
Delegate of China, according to this list, you are... Okay, Delegate of China, would the delegate like to go next in the speakers list?
Yes, please, sir.
All right, Delegate of China, your point of personal privilege has been acknowledged. And Delegate of China, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thank you, sir. Adaptation here refers to adjustments in ecological, social, or economic systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli and their effects or impacts. In simple terms, countries and communities need to develop adaptation solutions for impacts of climate change. that are already happening, as well as prepare for the future impacts. This can be achieved by small climate resilient developments, such as a combination of natural solutions and building improvements like planting shade trees and installing green roofs. Actions like these are especially important in historically marginalized communities where climate impacts can exacerbate existing inequalities. The delegate would like to yield the floor back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of China. Next on the list is the Delegate of Germany. Delegate of Germany, you have been recognized. You may please proceed with your speech.
Thanks, Chair. Germany aims to become greenhouse neutral by 2045. It has set preliminary targets of cutting emission by at least 65% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels and 88% by 2040. The country's first national climate law, passed in 2019 and amended in 2021, states annual reduction targets for individual sectors such as industry and transport until the year 2030. These are set in line with European greenhouse gas emission reduction plans. In case a target is missed or overshot, the law states that the difference will be spread out evenly over the remaining annual emission budgets of the sector until 2030 and beyond. With further targets set for 2040 and 2045, the ambition of Germany's national climate targets can be raised but not lowered. Germany's climate law also states that the new emission budget for the years after 2030 will be set in 2024, and these must be in line with goals of the law and the requirement of the European Union climate neutrality by 2050. The delegate would like to yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Germany. Next on the list is the Delegate of India. Delegate of India, the delegate has been recognized and may please proceed with the speech.
The delegate thanks the chair. India was an early adopter of the climate change adaptation and awareness strategies. India pushed for a joint declaration on the significance of global warming. India emphasizes the need to assess vulnerabilities and to plan adaptation measures. In June 2008, India's Prime Minister published the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which encompasses both climate protection and adaptation. The plan defines 8 priorities and national missions like solar energy, energy efficiency, sustainable housing, water preservation of ecosystem in the Himalayas, reforestation. The responsible ministries are currently working on detailed implementation plans for these 8 sectors. Adaptation measures are an important part of the integrated climate strategy. The first 2 areas, solar energy and energy efficiency, are mainly focused on climate protection, while the others include adaptation components, especially in the cases of agriculture and out of knowledge management. The Indian government has already set strategic adaptation priorities. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of India. Next on the speakers list, the Delegate of Bahrain. Delegate of Bahrain, the delegate has been recognized, and please proceed with your speech.
Thank you. Thanks for the recognition, Chair. Researchers have proved that the evolution of organisms over the years has always been connected with the very skill of adaptation. This was the single mantra for survival that was upheld by the different varieties of organisms that inhabit a globe. This very fact brings us the necessity to place adaptation over others for combating climate change. Bahrain has always been proud of the fact that we were very keen in adopting resilient plans. Bahrain's national adaptation planning efforts aims at enhancing the adaptive capacity to cope with climate change risk. As part of this overarching picture comes the National Adaptation Investment Plan to take the adaptation investment related efforts forward by addressing some of the pressing climate change adaptation needs. A precise and meticulous plan under 4 objectives has been developed for this purpose. A resilient programs for sea level rise and deforestation, especially in the Gulf of Tripoli, which experienced a destruction of 20%, are notably in progress. We would like to encourage other countries to come forward with their own adaptation plans and would also like to extend our support. It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change, namely adaptation. The delegation of Bahrain would like to thank the chair once again.
Thank you so much, Delegate of Bahrain. And the next speaker on the moderated speakers list is the Delegate of Japan. Delegate of Japan, you have been recognized, and the delegate is requested to proceed with the speech.
The delegate of Japan thanks the chair. The clock is ticking, especially when it comes to adaptation. We are in a race against time to adapt to a rapidly changing climate. According to the Global Climate Risk Index 2020, Japan is one of the most affected places by climate change today. And thus, Japan has developed exceptional capabilities to mitigate the aftermath and adapt to the challenges. Japan aims for a balance between 50-50 mitigation and adaptation. In this regard, Japan leads the way by enacting the Climate Change Adaptation Act in December 2018, which details how national and local governments, along with private sectors and ordinary citizens, can better counter the dangerous effects of global warming. Measures include developing high-temperature resistant agriculture products, mapping flood risks, and establishing new fishing grounds as warming oceans. Japan's innovative technology in earthquake-resistant building construction and floodgates installed to seal off the entrances of tunnels through which trains pass during floods are advanced disaster readiness technology that makes steady progress in Japan. A national adaptation plan for Japan is revised every 5 years based on climate change impact assessments. The delegate thanks the chair once again.
Thank you, Delegate of Japan. Next on the list is the Delegate of Bangladesh. Delegate of Bangladesh, the delegate has been recognized and is requested to proceed with the speech.
Delegate of Bangladesh thanks the chair. The world is already experiencing changes in average temperature, shifts in the season, and increasing frequency of extreme weather events and other climate change impacts a slow onset events. The faster the climate change.
So sorry for the interruption, Delegate of Bangladesh. Delegate of Bangladesh, could you please try and fix your audio because we are experiencing some difficulties in hearing you?
Yeah, just a minute.
Yes, Delegate of Bangladesh.
The delegate, please rejoin once more.
Sure, Delegate of Bangladesh. The chair will move you towards the end of the speakers list, and until then, the next speaker can take over. So, Delegate of Bangladesh, you have been moved towards the end of the general speakers list. The next speaker on the list is the Delegate of Jordan. Delegate of Jordan, you have been recognized, and you may please proceed with your speech.
The delegate of Jordan thanks the chair. Apart from the worsening climate change related effects in the country, the rising water demand among pressing issues such as increased population, more energy demand, and increasing water scarcity. Jordan has taken up various initiatives for this purpose. There's a National Water Strategy 2016-2025 incorporates provisions for climate change, water, energy, food nexus, sustainability of overexploited groundwater resources, and many more. As part of the country's effort to address the challenges associated with the ongoing water scarcity, the government is currently planning the Amman Aqaba Water Desalination and Conveyance Project, AAWDCP. This is announced to be the largest water generation scheme to be implemented in the country. 150 million cubic meters of fresh water on a daily basis, and many more efforts and visions. Jordan urges countries to start moving against climate change and improving the national adaptation plans of their respective countries, because climate change is no longer a possibility or a probability, but it is an incident that will happen at some time in the future. We cannot stop it, but we can fasten or slow it down its arrival. If we don't start now, the repercussions will be severe, with many regions going uninhabitable, and the death toll won't be in single-digit numbers, but millions. This can't be avoided or at most delayed only if we find robust solutions and all countries are willing to take up the necessary steps for climate resilient developments, because as the famous idiom goes, well begun is half done. The delegate of Jordan wishes to thank the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Jordan. Yes, Delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Norway would like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry that will the chair be taking another motion before the session closes?
Delegate of Norway, since we only have 30 minutes left until the end of the session, this moderated caucus will be our last for the day, and we will be adjourning the meeting for today. And from tomorrow, we will restart the GSL, and we'll have one more caucus and the unmoderated caucuses. Yes, Delegate of Maldives.
The delegate of Maldives would try to raise a point of personal privilege to get removed from the speakers list.
Sure, Delegate of Maldives. The chair board will remove the Delegate of Maldives from the speakers list, and it's done. Yes, Delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of personal privilege and inform the chairs that his other account has been minimized to the status of a participant.
Delegate of Thailand, could you please state your name so we can bring you back to the panelists?
The delegate's name is Delegate of Thailand, Ahmed.
Hopefully, the delegate has received the request to be moved into a panelist by now.
Yes, Chair, they have.
All right. Thank you, Delegate of Thailand. Thank you, Delegate of Maldives. If there is anything else, could you please lower your hands? Yes, Delegate of Maldives. All right, I guess that's a mistake. Anyways, moving forward, the next speaker on the list is the Delegate of Egypt. Delegate of Egypt, you have been recognized, and the delegate may please proceed with the speech.
Thanks to the chair. The COVID-19 pandemic hit Egypt at a time of immense global challenges. It crippled economies, small-scale and large-scale industries across the globe. To rise from this is a huge task, but thinking positively, it provides a chance to rise again, but this time in a way that focuses on implementing green methodologies. The decisions that we make affects the future of Earth. Being able to adapt to any climate change and ensure that people's lives as well as their livelihood are protected is a need of the hour. Countries must ensure that they map out areas of risk and construct emergency shelters for people, keeping in mind about the pandemic situation. Countries must also be financially prepared to help the affected people by providing loans and other forms of financial aid. Countries must also ensure that they have backup generators for electricity and have an emergency response squad to rescue people as well as to ensure the well-being of people during a natural calamity. Thanks to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Egypt. Delegate of Maldives, does the delegate have something to say?
Sorry, it was my mistake.
Not an issue, Delegate of Maldives. Next on the list is the Delegate of Sri Lanka. Delegate of Sri Lanka, you have been recognized and you may please proceed with the speech.
Poverty and lack of access to basic services, including infrastructure, financial services, healthcare, and social protections, are strong predictors of vulnerability to climate change. No adaptation strategy can be successful without keeping poor populations in mind and ensuring high vulnerability populations have the resources they need to adapt. Countries must protect critical infrastructure and ensure they're resilient to climate change. Sri Lanka has prioritized climate resilient development and has even signed a $92 million deal with the World Bank for a project based on climate resilience. Climate change is coming fast, and every country must be prepared for it or face the consequences. The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to thank the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Sri Lanka. Next on the list is the Delegate of Papua New Guinea. Delegate of Papua New Guinea, the delegate has been recognized and is requested to proceed with the speech.
The delegate of Papua New Guinea thanks the chair. Due to the current circumstances of climate change, adaptation and resilience has become necessary. For this, the government of Papua New Guinea has collaborated with the Asian Development Bank for building resilience to climate change. The Asian Development Bank is providing a grant to help Papua New Guinea build up its resilience and adapt to the impacts of climate change. The Papua New Guinean government is also taking steps to decrease the rate of deforestation by issuing various acts. Acts like the Development Strategic Plan 2010 to 2030, compatible development management policy, and the Papua New Guinea National Disaster Mitigation Policy. The government plans to launch more projects like these and fulfill the ones already launched. Though the country has fund issues, many organizations and governments came together to help the country and others with similar problems. After all, the goal to achieve is a common one. The delegate once again thanks the chair.
Thank you, delegate. Yes, delegate of Indonesia.
The delegate of Indonesia would like to raise a point of personal privilege to get removed from the moderated caucus.
Sure, delegate of Indonesia. If the chairboard understands correctly, the delegate of Indonesia wishes to remove the name from the speakers list. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, delegate of Indonesia. Moving on, the next speaker on the list is the delegate of Saudi Arabia. Delegate of Saudi Arabia, you have it recognized, and please proceed with your speech.
Honorable EB members and dear fellow delegates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia reaffirmed its commitment to Paris Agreement goals and achieving mitigation benefits through economic diversification and adaptation. Oil production, processing, and export are the primary economic activities of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The reliance on limited income resources puts at risk its ability to maintain a level of growth in the long run. Deforestation is at a high rate as only 1.3% of Saudi Arabia's land is forested. This results in abundant carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere that traps heat. In order to reduce climate change issues, all sustainable development plans to diversify the kingdom's sources of national income and reduce dependence on revenues from limited sources by increasing the share of other sectors in gross domestic product. These sectors include the manufacturing industries, energy-related derivatives, mining, tourism, logistics, and information technology industries. Saudi Arabia has announced it aims to plant 450 million trees by 2030, with a long-term target of 10 billion trees and collaborative efforts to plant 50 billion trees in the Middle East. Thank you, Chair. The floor is yours.
Thank you, delegate of Saudi Arabia. Yes, delegate of Armenia.
The delegate of Armenia would like to raise a point of personal privilege stating that the delegate needs to have water.
Sure, delegate of Armenia, please feel free to do so. Yes, delegate of UK.
The delegate of UK would like to raise a point of information that whether the students who are left for GSL will get chance today or not.
Delegate of UK, that is a point of personal privilege to know whether whether you will get a chance or not. Delegates, as I said before, do not worry. All the delegates will get a chance to speak in the GSL by tomorrow. Those delegates who haven't gotten a chance to speak in the GSL yet, not to worry at all. All the delegates will get a chance by the end of tomorrow. I hope it's clear, delegate.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, delegate of Canada.
I'd like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry. Due to time constraints, will we be finishing this as there are 20 more minutes left on this moderated caucus and then move on to unmoderated caucus, or
delegate of Canada, after this moderated caucus, we will be suspending the meeting for today. And we can have one for tomorrow's session. We will be having the unmoderated caucuses, one moderated caucus, and we'll be finishing off with the general speakers list. Is it clear, delegate of Canada? Delegate of Sri Lanka.
The delegate of Sri Lanka would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Canada for using the personal pronoun I.
Yes, delegate of Sri Lanka, thank you for pointing that out. Are there any other points of inquiry? Yes, delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a motion to suspend
Delegate of Thailand, the committee is not able to hear you properly. Could the delegate of Thailand please repeat the motion or point once more? Delegate of Thailand. All right, seeing none, we'll be moving on. Next on the list is the delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Thailand, you have been recognized. Is the delegate present? Delegate of Thailand. All right, seeing delegate of Thailand is having some connectivity issues, we will be moving delegate of Thailand towards the end of the list. Next on the list is the delegate of Czech Republic. Delegate of Czech Republic, you have been recognized. Please proceed with the speech.
Yeah, thank you for the recognition, Chair. Climate change can lead to various changes in patterns of precipitation, rising sea levels, altered patterns of agriculture, increased extreme weather events, the expansion of a range of tropical diseases, and the opening of new marine trade routes. The Paris Agreement recognizes a balance between mitigation and adaptation to address climate change. The National Adaptation Strategy identifies the priority areas which are expected to be the most affected by climate change, which includes forest management, agriculture, water regime, urban landscape, biodiversity and ecosystem services, health and hygiene, tourism and recreation, transportation, industry and energy sector, emergency events, and protection of the population and environment. The most important principles of adaptation to climate change in the Czech Republic are considered to be an integrated approach, both to assessing the synergy of adaptation and mitigation measures and to assessing the suitability of the proposed measures for the individual components of the environment, the economy, and the social sphere. Also, the priority of implementation of solutions with multiple effects on the side of benefits and with low negatives on the side of risk or cost, identification of opportunities associated with the adaptation process, prevention of inappropriate adaptation, and finally building the knowledge base and providing objective information for decision-making processes at all levels. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Czech Republic. Next, yes, Delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia would like to raise a point of personal privilege to drink water.
Sure, Delegate of Saudi Arabia. Please feel free to do so. Next on the list is the Delegate of Canada. Delegate of Canada, you have been recognized, and the delegate is requested to proceed with the speech.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Climate resilient developments divides the huge task of climate change into locally manageable ones. Having a climate resilient economy, one that can withstand or recover quickly from climate impacts on short or long terms. Climate resilience saves lives, reduces poverty, addresses underlying inequalities, and delivers strong economic returns. Building climate resilience cannot happen without climate adaptation or actions taken to ensure that communities and countries alike can withstand climate risks. Canada's climate is changing, bringing new risks for its roads, buildings, water pipes, ports, and transmission lines. As past climate parameters can no longer be relied on while making decisions related to the design, construction, and maintenance of new existing infrastructure, new approaches are needed. An integrated whole of society approach bringing together all orders of government. Sectors and civil societies are required to increase the climate resilience of infrastructure supporting Canadian communities. Greater effort and investment are needed if Canada's aging infrastructure is to keep up with the accelerating climate change and close an infrastructure deficit, which is already estimated to be between Canadian dollars of 150 billion and Canadian dollars of 1 trillion. Canada supports climate resilience and encourages countries to adopt climate resilient infrastructure with adaptation policies. Thank you. Give the floor back to the Chair.
Thank you, Delegate of Canada. Vice Chair, are you present here?
Yes, sure.
All right, you may please take over.
Okay. Next on the speakers list is the Delegate of Cuba. The Delegate of Cuba, you may proceed.
Thanks, Chair. Now, Cuba is highly committed to the global endeavor to combat climate change and its devastating effect. Following the adaptation of the Paris Agreement, the Cuban government reinforced its national efforts and has built an ambitious framework for action and mitigation. Now, adapting the life in a changing climate involves adjusting to actual or expected future climate. The goal is to reduce vulnerability to the harmful effect on climate change, like sea encroachment. Many of the possible measures for adapting the climate change lie primarily outside the direct control of the health sector. Though the government has created a new method to prevent the destruction of the environment, such as organic farming versus the chemical farming or throughout the land. Designated area were built for garbage and industrial wastes instead of dumping them into the Havana Bay. Some other way of adapting the climate change are such as prepare for longer and more intense fire season, climate change, protect air quality, protect farm and food supply from climate's impact, prepare for manage retreat. Cuba is mapping out the area that are at the high risk of increased sea level, and there are many places in the Cuba that are experiencing drought. So Cuban government are taking steps to help them out. But as we all know that Cuba emits only 0.1% of the total carbon emission. So it is not only the responsibility of
The delegate
Cuba,
of
but
Cuba is requested to conclude the speech, please.
yes, Cuba is doing its best to adjust adapting practices. Thank you. Now I yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, delegate of Cuba. Next on the speakers list is the delegate of Mongolia. The delegate of Mongolia, you have been recognized. Please proceed.
The delegate of Mongolia thanks the chair. Adaptation needs and priorities are determined broadly in the national determined contributions. Moreover, Mongolia's NDC mentions an ongoing process to formulate a national adaptation plan, which was initiated in 2018 and is currently being drafted as the primary means to identify specific adaptation processes. To identify specific adaptation priorities, adaptation and mitigation co-benefits, as well as nature-based solutions to help guide its national climate change response. The government of Mongolia approved the NDC action plan in 2021, but Mongolia do face certain challenges in implementing the NDC action plan, such as access to finance, inadequate institutional arrangements, and lack of human and technical capacities. To overcome these challenges, specifically on access to finance, Mongolia has to rely on international funding from developed countries, on strengthening institutional arrangements and technical capacity building. Mongolia is looking forward to the SCALA program support over the next few years. Thank you. The delegate of Mongolia, yield the time back to the chair.
Thank you, delegate of Mongolia. The next on the speakers list is the delegate of Congo. Delegate of Congo, you have been recognized. You may proceed.
Thank you for the recognition, Chair. As Albert Einstein quoted, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Today's world is changing rapidly. The climate of today is not the climate of tomorrow. Adapting to these changes is as important as the efforts taken to decelerate the changes. Climate resilience is the need of today. The Republic of Congo has already established new adaptation policies, such as the National Climate Adaptation Policy, which will help our citizens adapt to the present and future changes. Within the framework of its initial national communication, the Republic of Congo has undertaken studies on the country's vulnerability and adaptation strategy in priority areas such as water resources, agriculture, and coastline. The country's objective in terms of water resources is mainly to ensure correct water supply to the populations of major urban centers such as Brazzaville and Pointe-Noire. It is evident that the Republic of Congo is a tropical country characterized by its very hot, humid climate. We are one of those countries which is affected instantly by global climate changes. We are formulating and implementing adaptation measures, including prioritizing afforestation, transfer of automobile industry to renewable energy resources, by even providing subsidies
Delegate
up
of
to
Congo is
40%.
requested to conclude the speech.
The delegate would like to conclude by quoting, "Adapt today, exist tomorrow." Thank you, Chair. I would like to yield the floor back to you.
Thank you, delegate. Next on the speakers list is the delegate of UK. The delegate of UK, you have been recognized.
Thank, thank you, sir. The UK's legally binding 2008 Climate Change Act obliges the government to set out policies to adapt to the climate change. In addition to its more widely known mitigation objectives, which aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Adaptation policies are largely covered by the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Areas, which is tasked with managing increasing risks in areas such as flooding, drought, heat, sea level rise, and extreme weather. Mitigation policy, meanwhile, falls under the responsibility of the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS, which last year released its Clean Growth Strategy, setting out policies aimed at cutting the UK's emissions. Under the adaptation section of CCA, the government is required to publish a risk assessment of the current and predicted impact of climate change every 5 years. This is based in part on scientific advice given ahead of the risk assessment from the adaptation subcommittee of the Committee on Climate Change, the government's official climate advisors. The delegates of UK would like to thank the chair once again.
Thank you, delegate of UK. The next on the speakers list is the delegate of Philippines. The delegate of Philippines, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
Just one second, Vice Chair. Yes, delegate of Albania, you have been raising your hand.
The delegate of Albania would like to raise a point of order against the delegate of Congo for using the personal pronoun you.
Delegate of Congo, you have been warned. Try not to use personal pronouns again. Delegate of Japan.
The delegate of Japan has a point of inquiry.
Yes, delegate of Japan.
Can we answer the questions raised by the other delegates in a single chat? Since both the questions are similar.
Sure, delegate of Japan. Just make sure you tag both the questions which was sent by the representative of the delegation.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes, delegate of Thailand.
The delegate of Thailand would like to raise a point of personal privilege.
Yes.
And they had a technical that made them disconnect, and they would like to have their name reinstated if they missed anything.
It's all right, delegate of Thailand. We have moved the delegate's name towards the end of the list, and the delegate will be getting a chance to speak. Yes, delegate of Saudi Arabia.
The delegate of Saudi Arabia would like to raise a point of personal privilege to whether the questions answered in the group, the questions in the group asked can be answered even before saying the speech. On the general speaking list or not.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia, points of information can only be asked after a delegate has given his or her speech in the general speakers list. So delegates, when you're asking points of information in the WhatsApp group, please make sure that the delegate who you're asking to has already given the speech in the GSL at least once. So dear delegates, please do keep that in mind. Keeping that in mind, let's move forward, Vice Chair.
So if the speech
Yes.
is not given yet, so no need to answer?
No, delegate of Saudi Arabia. If your speech has not been given in the GSL and a delegate has raised a point of information regarding it, you may not need answer it now.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Yes, Vice Chair, you may please go.
Yes, the next speaker on the speakers list is the delegate of Philippines. The delegate of Philippines, you have been recognized. Please
ma'am.
proceed.
In the light of the respected chair, the vice chair, and the delegates of the House, this is the delegate of Philippines, here to talk about one of the most relevant topic, adaptation practices and climate resilient development. The country, Philippines, can proceed with an NMT-GCF. Super Typhoon Haiyan, which reaches a wind speed of 195 miles per hour, is killing thousands of people and leaving millions of people homeless. Between 2006 and 2013, the Philippines was hit by 75 natural disasters, most of which were typhoons, tropical storms, and floods, causing $3.8 billion in the damage and loss to the agricultural sector. Climate impacts on agriculture are expecting to cause an annual GDP loss of up to 2.2% in the year 2100. Natural disasters are threatening development gains in most of the developing countries. By investing in resilience, we can better manage climate and disaster risk to help extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity. Once again, the delegate thanks the chair and the vice chair.
Yes, thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Thailand, may I know the reason as to why your hand is raised? Okay, the next speaker on the speakers list is the Delegate of Mauritius. The Delegate of Mauritius, you have been recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Climate Resilient Development Framework is a development-first approach to climate change adaptation. This framework ultimately helps ensure that countries are able to cope with further and future developments with their climate ways and preserve development gains while minimizing damages. In response to the climate change impacts, the climate adaptation programs in Mauritius includes encouraging planting of coastal mangroves, motivate people to do water conservation, and some existing government policies that include the Smart City project that champions the use of sustainable infrastructure and green energy. Mauritius has furthermore committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. In sum, the Mauritian government has existing laws and policies addressing climate change, a government office to directly address adaptation, and some funding available to create new projects and buffer existing projects with adaptive component. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The next delegate on the speakers list is the Delegate of Mexico. The Delegate of Mexico, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Climate change is no more a distant problem. We have been experiencing changes in climatic variables such as rising temperature, variable rainfall, frequent droughts, hurricane, and typhoons, and have almost failed to reach a global consensus on the mitigation of greenhouse gases. Adaptation to climate change refers to adjustment or changes in the system to minimize the negative impact and optimize the varies from sector to sector, and each sector faces a specific challenge in adaptation to CC. Some of the adaptation methods include regenerative farming, geoenergy, thermal energy batteries, geothermal, hydroelectricity power, hydrogen fuel, solar power, clean technologies, etc. In conclusion, Mexico believes it is important to reduce the usage of fuel-based mechanisms and increase the usage of renewable energy technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The next delegate on the speakers list is the Delegate of Georgia. The Delegate of Georgia, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
Georgia, would like to thank Chair. So the Delegate of Georgia is going to talk about how a person can adapt to the weather. I'm going to, my apologies for using pronouns. The Delegate of Georgia is going to show one example of how a person can adapt to their weather's area. For example, if it's a cold area and the person wants to adapt to it. So
Delegate of Georgia, the chairboard is so sorry to interrupt the delegate, but Delegate of Georgia, could you please try and fix your audio since the committee is not able to hear the delegate properly? Delegate of Georgia, please try and use your phones.
Is it audible?
No, Delegate of Georgia, unfortunately, the committee still can't hear you properly. All right, Vice Chair, you can please move Delegate of Georgia towards the end of the list and you can proceed with the Delegate of Ghana.
Yes, the Delegate of Georgia will be moved down. Now we'll be moving on with the Delegate of Ghana. The Delegate of Ghana, you have been recognized. You may please.
The Delegate of Ghana would like to thank the Vice Chair for recognizing.
increased resilience to climate change in northern Ghana through the management of water resources and diversification of livelihoods, the Adaptation Fund project. The project aims at addressing climate change and induced decrease in the availability in increasing unpredictability of water resources. The associated negative impacts of these trends on the livelihoods of rural communities in the three northern regions. The main objectives of the program is therefore to enhance the resilience and adaptive capacity of the communities to climate impacts and risk of water resources in northern Ghana. This will achieve through improvement in water access and increase capacity and coordination for integrated water management to support other uses of water resources, especially for the diversification of rural livelihoods. This will be done so by delivering the following three complementary outcomes. Outcome 1. Improve planning and management of water resources, taking into account climate change impacts on surface and groundwater resources. Outcome 2. Climate resilient management of water resources by the communities in the northern Ghana. Outcome 3. Enhanced diversification of livelihoods of communities in northern Ghana. I would like to, the delegate of Ghana would like to thank once more again to Vice Chair.
Thank you, delegate. Now we're moving on to the next speaker, and the next speaker is the delegate of Belgium. The delegate of Belgium, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
Just 1 second, Vice Chair. Yes, delegate of France.
Delegate of France apologizes for the misuse of the raise hand option.
It's all right, delegate of France. Yes, delegate of Morocco.
The delegate of Morocco would like to raise a point of order towards the delegate for using the personal pronoun I.
All the delegates have once again been warned not to use any personal pronouns. Thank you, delegate of Morocco. Yes, delegate of Poland.
Delegate of Poland would like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you for that one. Yes, delegate of Poland.
Is there going to be GSL sessions tomorrow, since many of the delegates couldn't deliver the speech today due to lack of time?
Definitely, delegate of Poland will continue GSL tomorrow.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, please continue.
Yes, the delegate of Belgium, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you for the recognition. The Belgian institutional structure. At national level, the Working Group Adaptation under the Coordination Committee for International Environmental Policy, CCIEP, monitors and discusses European and international decisions in relation to adaptation, which might have national consequences or bring obligations with them, such as the Green Paper and White Paper on adaptation. At the same time, and in order to develop a national adaptation strategy, a working group adaptation was created under the National Climate Commission. This group focuses on the issues of domestic adaptation, the follow-up of the adaptation policies and measures elaborated in different regional and federal administrations. In practice, both groups consist of the same people, which operate under a different mandate depending on the context and the theme of discussion. At regional levels, committees and contact groups have been set up in both the Wallon and Welsh region. These groups are bringing together representatives of various sectors likely to be affected by climate change, such as water, air, agriculture, natural and forest health, spartan planning, etc. The roles of these groups are to exchange data and gather information on current actions undertaken by different departments, which in practice constitute bottom-up climate change adaptation measures, and to coordinate an official regional position towards the national level and to identify priority goals and other adaptation strategies to be developed or implemented.
The delegate of Belgium is requested to conclude.
Okay. Wallon Region Adaptation Plan, Flemish Adaptation Plan, in both the founders and Wallon groups, international communication and strategy are actively pursued. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. The next on the speakers list is the delegate of Albania. The delegate of Albania, you have been recognized. You may please proceed. Before that, the delegate of Poland. May I know the reason as to why your hand is raised?
The delegate of Poland would like to raise a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, delegate.
What time will the tomorrow's session start?
Delegate of Poland, once the session is over, we'll be briefing about what is going to happen tomorrow. So do not worry. Once the moderated caucus is over, we will let you know everything you need to know about tomorrow's session, Delegate of Poland. So until then, I hope we can carry on. Vice Chair?
Yes, the next on the speakers list is the delegate of Albania. The delegate of Albania, you have been recognized. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. While talking about adaptation practices for climate resilient development, developing technology and industrialization are often directly proportional. Industrialized countries are the main contributors to the already perceptible change in the climate. That is why these countries must now set a good example and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, developing countries already confront many challenges to improving their economies and the lives of their citizens. With industries operating, 100% pollution-free environment is a myth. Adequate and effective pollution control measures are required so that adverse effects on the environment are minimized. Accumulation of industrial waste has assumed great proportions while its utilization has been neglected for long. When conservation of environment is of prime importance, a lot of weightage should be given to recycling and reusing discarded components, commercial utilization of fly ash, blast furnace slag, cathode or anode carbon scraps, red mud, iron ore, and blue dust fine should be given importance. The delegate of Albania once again thanks the chair and yields the time.
As you can see, the time for the moderated caucus has elapsed, but by the discretionary power of the chair, we would be granting another extra 5 minutes so that everybody can get an opportunity to speak in the moderated caucus list. So, Chair, I would like you to add an extra 5 minutes to the list. Okay, thank you so much. Now, next on the speakers list is the delegate of Bangladesh.
The delegate thanks the chair. The world is already experiencing changes in average temperature, shifts in the season, and increasing frequency of extreme weather events and other climate change impacts. The faster the climate change, the longer adaptation efforts are put off. The more difficult and expensive it could be. Adaptation refers to adjustments in ecological, social, or economical system in response to actual or expected climate stimuli and their effects or impacts. Parties to the UNFCCC and regional and international dimensions. It is a key compound of the long-term global response to climate change to protect people, livelihood, and ecosystem. The growing urgency to adapt to the impacts of the climate change has promoted significant growth in the number of institutions, bodies, mechanisms, and other instruments under the UNFCCC process that support parties in advancing adaptation actions. The delegate thanks the chair.
Thank you, delegate. The delegate of France, may I know as to why your hand is raised?
The delegate of France would like to raise a point of order to the EB members for using the personal pronoun I.
The chair apologizes along with the EB members. The next on the speakers list is the delegate of Thailand. The delegate of Thailand, you have been recognized. You may please proceed.
The delegate thanks the chair. In the words of Charles Darwin, it is not the strongest of the species who survive, nor is it the smartest, but those who can adapt. Distinguished chair and fellow delegates, just like the seemingly endless ocean, climate change engulfs us from many directions. We find ourselves facing droughts, floods, and severe storms on a constant basis due to the rising sea levels and increasing global temperatures, which puts our crops and by extension our people and their nutritional sustainability at great risk. With the blessing of His Royal Highness King Vajir, we adopted multiple adaptation practices under the Climate Master Plan, such as the construction of a flood prevention wall around Bangkok and a program that aims at slowly shifting towards organic agriculture. We urge the committee to reconsider the $50 billion proposed by the adaptation, and if 50 billion sounds like a lot, we would like to remind you that 5 of the most richest countries engage in $25 trillion. Yes, trillion. of quantitative easing, and 9 trillion of which were used to fight the pandemic in the last 22 months. Had we used this money to support the energy transition or fund the adaptation plans, we would have secured millions of people their homes and reached the 2-degree decrease we so desperately needed and thrived for and still thrive for. How is our negotiations any good as 30.7 million people, 30.7 million lives are forcibly displaced by climate calamities in the year 2020 alone? Fellow delegates, we urge you not to allow the fate of the most intelligent species to be doomed by their most vicious instinct, greed. The delegate yields the floor to the chair.
Thank you, delegates. Next on the speakers list is the delegate of Georgia. The delegate of Georgia has been recognized. You may proceed.
The delegate of Georgia would like to thank Chair. The delegate of Georgia would, the delegate of Georgia is going about some example of adapting practices to if a person lives in if a person want to adapt to a cold climate, so they can either the thermostat down or they could go rest. Anything could that make a person shiver. That with time the person will get used to the. Now let's talk about climate resilient development. Example of that is the climate change resilient practice serves as a modern term resilience, most of our natural disaster and house structures. The daughter would like to
Thank you, delegate of Georgia. May I know why the delegate of Egypt has raised their hand?
Delegate of Egypt would like to raise a point of personal privilege. The delegate was unable to hear what the delegate of Georgia was saying.
Yes, actually, she was facing a little bit of internet issues. So could the delegate of Georgia kindly please say her speech once again?
It's all right, Vice Chair, because we are moving towards the end of the session and we are running short of time. So Vice Chair, if it's okay with you, can I take over?
Yes, sure.
All right, delegates, that brings us to the end of the moderated caucus because we have finished the speakers list and we have come to the end of the extended time as well. So dear delegates, I told you we have to finish the session by 2 p.m. today. It is to wait, not an issue. Delegates, we have with us international press who are looking forward to asking you some questions regarding the session today. So before we suspend the meeting for today, may I ask Taha Khan, our member of international press, to please come and interview a few of our delegates. Are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Delegates, you may feel free to interact with a member from the international press who will be interacting with you as well. Mr. Taha Khan, the virtual lectern is all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. My first question goes to the delegate of Egypt, Akshay. Do you feel that the MUN has changed you as a person?
Yes, certainly the MUN is a wonderful platform which enables me personally to meet a lot of people around, a lot of new people, make new friends and have fun, obviously learn about new things, discuss about them, improve my debating skills. And it made me more disciplined personality, and it also taught me to give chance to people who have, give chance to everyone and ensure that everyone gets involved equally and not just continuously talk. So it has certainly taught me a lot of things.
Okay, thank you, Delegate of Egypt. Do you have any feedback for the MUN? How has your experience been here with us?
It's been fantastic so far. all the delegates are very vibrant. They have certainly researched very well. They have been, debating very well. It's really nice.
Thank you, Delegate of Egypt. My second question goes to the delegate of Sri Lanka, Bilal. Have you ever considered joining the actual United Nations when you grow up?
Well, I've been in a few sessions before, but I have never won anything yet. So I don't think, I don't think I would be accepted in the real MUN. But no, as a career opportunity, I haven't considered it. Though after the first MUN, I thought about it, but no.
Thank you, Delegate of Sri Lanka. Would you have any feedback for the MUN?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Taha, for interacting with the delegates. We also have another member of the international press here with us, Ms. Shri Priya. Ms. Shri Priya, are you there with us?
Yes.
All right, ma'am, the stage is, virtual lectern is all yours. You may feel free to interact with the delegates and ask them questions as you like.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So I would like to interview the delegate of Australia. Yes. Okay. So the delegate of Australia, is she there?
Yes, I'm here. The delegate of Australia is here.
So why did you decide to join the MUN? Why did you decide to join the MUN?
Because it's a whole new, it's a great opportunity to meet many people around and be friends with them and know more about each topic and know more about where each country stands on it. And it's a very fun and a very good learning opportunity you'll have.
So how is it going to help in the future? Like college applications, or how is it going to help in the future?
It will help me in, if I am going, choosing this career, of course it will help me in that way. And also in researching ways, like how to research and use my skills in debating and things like that. Of course it will help me in the future. And also interacting with people.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shri Priya. Is that all, or do you have one more question to any other delegate as well?
Yes, this is all.
That's all. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Shri Priya. A round of applause for the international press, everybody. All right. So delegates, it is high time that we suspend the meeting for today. Don't worry, after we suspend the meeting, I will be here with all of you explaining what is going to happen tomorrow and taking feedback from each and every one of you as well. So for now, are there any motions on the floor for the suspension of debate? Yes, delegate of Norway.
The delegate of Norway would like to raise a motion to suspend the formal debate and adjourn today's session.
This motion is now in order. Delegates, are there any seconds to this motion? Thank you, delegates. Kindly lower your hands. Are there any objections to this motion? I hope not. Thank you. Seeing no objections, this motion has been passed and today's first session for UNFCCC is hereby declared suspended until tomorrow. A round of applause to yourselves, delegates. All of you have done a wonderful and marvelous job and you have made us very proud as well.